Alrighty. Let's do this. Continue. Load. Alright, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Yes.
ちょっとくらい軽いものなら動かせるようになった。
ちょっとくらいって例えば石とかですか？
The cat over here, like, need to
Yeah.
report me.
もうちょっとかな。
Very good, kitty. Even if you're a pain in the butt. Yeah.
じゃあノートとか？
2、3ページくらいなら。
2、3ページくらい。
何それ、そんなんじゃスカートめくりくらいにしか使えないじゃん。
今はまだ大したことないかもしれないけど、そのうちもっと大きいものだって動かせるようになるって。
Seneca, you jerk. I tried really hard. But still, flipping up skirts, huh? I see. I hadn't thought of that. Seneca no Enchi. I'd overlooked that. What a brilliant idea. But I couldn't do it here. No, but this might be a good chance to show off my powers. And what's more, Seneca, this is your fault to begin with. Do you know how hard I worked just to move one tiny little object? I'd barely gotten a wink of sleep last night. It was the least she could do after all that effort. Oh no. You broke him.
タク？
そうかいそうかい。そんなに言うなら見せてやろうじゃないか、この僕の力を。
宮代先輩？
悪いけど今さら後悔しても遅いからな。僕の心に火をつけた自分たちの愚かさを呪うがいい。
No one could stop me now. I concentrated. A terrible, beautiful Excalibur appeared in the corner of my vision. The power welled forth from deep within me. Come, my Excalibur! Excalibur! Give me power!
見るがいい。
This is...
これがギガロマニアックスとしての僕の力だ。
My power lifted up the skirt of every single girl in the school. Every girl in the school.
何これ？
You can try to hold down your skirts, but it won't work. No one can stop my power.
どうだ見たか、これが僕の。
じゃあこれが宮代先輩の。これがタクの。
そう、これこそが僕の力だ。
The scene around me was something out of a nightmare. No, a most wonderful dream. Every girl in the school was walking around with their skirts blown up now.
どうだ、 恐れ入ったか。
さすが宮代先輩です。
これからは僕の言うことは何でも聞くか。
Getting a little carried away there, aren't you?
タクの言う通りにするから。
分かった。だったら許してやる。
I slowly lowered my hands, and the chaos around me began to subside.
やだ、も
さあ約束通り、これからお前たちは僕の言いなりだ。分かったな。
う。タクル
なんてことが。
様。ねえねえセリ、宮代先輩どうしちゃったん？気にしないで、いつものことだから。
Oh, ouch.
であるからして、この場合はテンピーよ。
Arimura and I had decided that it would be better not to use my power for a while. No matter what that woman was after, it was very likely that it had something to do with our powers, which meant that I should avoid doing anything that would attract attention. And everybody knew when you had a trump card like this, it was best to master it in secret and play it at the right moment. Cat, cat, get down. Down. Thank you.
これをこの式に代入すると、
Anyway, why was math always such a pain? I wanted information, not formulas. Numbers and formulas were just ideas and didn't provide any benefit at all as information.
こういう時は
I took out my Pokecom and hid it under my desk, then loaded Shibuya News.
お、どうした宮代。
いや、なんでも。
そうか。じゃあ次の問題解いてみろ。
Ganbate. Crap, that was a mistake. But this was big news. Dai news.
おい、大変だ。ニュースだ、ニュース。
I heard the door to the club room fly open, and Ito ran inside.
なんだよ大声で。
何落ち着いてんだ、宮代。ニュースなんだよ。それも大ニュー
Hi,
ス。
hi.
よく聞け。なんと例の事件。ニュージェネの再来と呼ばれる一連の事件。
犯人が捕まったんだろ。
そうなんだよ。
Oh.
なんだ。お前知ってたのか。
当たり前だろ。僕を誰だと思ってるんだ。これでも伊達に学園一の状況を自負してるわけじゃない。お前が持ってく。
それじゃあ捕まったやつの情報も。
ハイダリコ18歳無職。昨夜渋谷で多発した放火騒動の中、街中を歩いているところ警官によって確保だろ。
なんだ。知ってたのかよ。つまんねえの。今度こそ俺の方が早いと思ったのによ。
To tell the truth, I'd just found out about it in math class. But that's how information worked. Knowing things first put you at advantage. That said, I was overjoyed to know that the woman who'd attacked me had been arrested. Now I wouldn't have to be afraid of being attacked again.
でもうち的には捕まってよかったのかな。
なんだよ、尾上。それどういう。
だってさ、事件がもっと大きくなってれば、もっとでっかいスクープをゲットできるチャンスもあったかもしれないでしょ。
確かにそうだな。そういう意味では惜しかったとも言えるか。
タク的にはどう？もっと事件を追いたかった？
I wasn't sure. It was true that the bigger the Scot, the more people would be paying attention.
いや、よかったんじゃないか。
なんだ。お前にしては随分消極的な意見だな。もっと起きてくれってんじゃないかと思ったが。
Sedeka like, okay, fine.
なんだよ。それじゃあまるで僕が凶悪事件を望んでいるみたいじゃないか。いいか、言っておくが、僕はサイコパスじゃない。別に事件が起きることを望んでいるわけではなく、起きてしまった事件の真相の究明こそを望んでいるんだ。
To tell the truth, I was a little disappointed that the case had ended this way. But half of me felt relieved, too. Anybody who'd been the target of a murder attempt could understand how terrifying it was for me to have that woman with those strange powers try to kill me. There were ways to deal with a physical attack, but her power violated all the laws of physics. It was a miracle I'd made it away from her alive at all. So I was honestly glad that the woman, Haida, had gotten caught.
まああの女が警察に捕まってしまったことで全てが警察の手に委ねられてしまうというのは甚だ不本意ではあるが、尾上の言うようにもうちょっと事件が長引いていれば世間の注目も集まっただろうし、そこでビシッと僕が事件を解決していたならそれはそれでこの新聞部も有名になったんだろうけれど、それも今更言ったって仕方がないことだろう。
待てよ、これってさ、俺たちが追ってた事件は全て終焉を迎えたってことか？
それは
Before I could give my opinion, the door opened.
ひなえちゃんの登場ですよ。
有村何しに。
冷たい。共に生死を分ける戦いをくぐり抜けた仲なのに。
ああ、そういや宮代が襲われた時有村も一緒だったんだっけか？
そうっすよ。
So
こ
seal.
う暗いお姉さんが現れたと思ったらドカーンボワードーンそりゃもう大変だったんですから。
She was waving her hands in an exaggerated manner as she spoke, but it was impossible to figure out what she was trying to say.
ほー、なるほどなるほど。ここが新聞部ですか。そういえばひなちゃんってここ来るの初めてだっけ？あの日、ほら文化祭の日に来てるけど、あの時はじっくり見たりいじったりできる感じじゃなかったじゃん。
Arimura walked around the room, staring at everything, and stopped in front of the cork board on the wall.
あ、これかっこいい。海外ドラマみたい。ね
だろ。一応事件のことについて。
えねえセリ、これは何？それはね。
She wasn't listening at all.
なあ宮代、さっきの話だけどさ。
ああ、さっきの悪い、何の話だっけ？
だから事件はこれで終わりかってこと。
Bwah!
ああ、そうか。それについては僕も考えてみたんだ。
何の話っす？
Nanno Shisu. Until a moment ago, she was enjoying her conversation with Sarika, but now Arimura happily butted into
だから
ours.
今回の一連の事件についての話だよ。ほら、僕たちを襲った女が捕まっただろ。だから。
捕まったんですか？あの怖い女の人？
なんだよ、知らなかったのか？
She had friends in a lot of places and seemed like she'd be really quick to pick up on new information. So I was surprised to see she was actually a wrong-sider.
なんだよもう。警察も捕まったなら捕まったって教えてくれればいいのに。
まったくだな。こっちは危うく丸焦げになるところだったんだから。
ですよね。利用する時だけ利用して、これだから市民の信用をなくしちゃうんですよ。
まあ警察への文句は置いといてだ。その宮代の考えってのは？
Off my desk. Thank you. I keep on hoping if I
so
snap
that-
in his ear every
Ika,
time he goes on my desk, he'll
これ
like
までの事
associate
件
my
と
desk with
これ
bad
からのこ
snapping
とを
sounds.
総合
But
して考える
it's not
とだ。
working so far. First, there were the murders, and then there were the fires as well. I decided to think about the relationship between the two of them. The first thing I had to do was go over all the cases that had happened so far. All the cases that had happened so far formed what people were calling the return of the new generation madness. The first murder was Don't Look at Me, the death of Ootani, the Nikonia live streamer. And the second, Leaky Noise, Momone Takayanagi, the anime song singer. And the third was, that's right, Kaiten Detto. That's where Arimura's acquaintance Kakita had been killed. I remember that one clearly as well, duh. I'd been there after all. And the next one, the fourth murder, was another one I'd never forget. Gotsuan Detsu, where Watabe, the internet reporter, had died at the school culture festival. Those were the 4 murders that had happened so far. The problem was what came next. The fires. The fires had happened at near the Don't Look at Me incident in Jinan, near the leaky noise incident in Shinsen, near the revolving dead incident around the Love Hotel, near the Gatsuan death incident, in other words, near Hekiho Academy. That's right, the fires were happening regularly near the sites of the New Generation Madness.
以上のことからわかるのは、一連の事件と連続放火事件が非常に近いところで
Oh wait, does it say what day we're on right now? Because I think this is
起こっているとい
the
うことだ。
day that she's supposed to die, right? Maybe, or maybe not. It would be strange to think that they weren't connected somehow. I concluded that the fires were all set by Riko Haida, the pyrokinetic gigalomaniac.
でもそれじゃあ手口が違うのはなんでだ？これまでの事件とは明らかにやり口が違うだろう。
それは
Why?
そう、これまでの放火事件はあくまでも練習だったんだよ。練習したけどうまくいかなかった。だからこれまでは違う。なんだよ、納得できてないって顔だな。
I think you're reaching.
意見があるなら言えばいいだろ。
意見っていうかさ、
じゃああの施設はどうなるんです？
Arimura seemed annoyed at Ito's inability to finish his sentence and interrupted with a doubt of her own.
施設ってあの病院の地下にあった施設のことか。
そうです。あそこで行われてた研究、あれは事件と関係なかったって宮代先輩は思うんですか？
それは
It probably did. But the experiments that were performed down there ended with the earthquake. So it would be strange for her to just suddenly start killing people now. When I told Arimura that, she still didn't look satisfied.
柿田さんのことはご存知ですよね？
あの回転デッドの被害者だよな、確か。
はい。あの人が私の兄の友人だったって話はしましたよね。
I remembered that she had.
今だから正直に言いますけど、彼は私たちのような能力者について調べていたんです。そしてその後ろには何か巨大な組織が関わっているかもしれないって。
巨大な組織な。まるで陰謀論だな。で、その組織ってのは？
それを事件のあったあの日に教えてくれる予定でした。ですが
He died. No, he was murdered.
じゃあ有村は犯人はあのハイダリコって女じゃないって言いたいのか？
そういうわけじゃないですよ。私には難しいことわかんないし、ただ仮にあの人が犯人だとしても裏にはまだ何かあるんじゃないかって、そんな風に思うだけです。
伊藤はどう思う？
まあ確かに組織とか機関とかってのは魅力的な言葉ではあるが、あんまリアリティはねえよな。結局どっちにしても今の状況じゃ判断材料が少なすぎるっつうかさ。
尾上は？
私はそうだな。タクはどう思う？
質問に質問で返すなよ。
そうだけどさ、私にはわかんないんだもん。
If you don't know, at least try to think about it, okay?
しょうがないな。じゃあ僕の意見を言うが、僕はこれ以上襲われるのはごめんだ。だからあの女が犯人だったらいいなって思う。
To be honest, I still thought it was a miracle I'd made it out of that alive. If she'd attacked me when I was asleep, I wouldn't have lasted a minute.
あとは警察の取り調べ次第だろうな。 あの女が犯人にしても違うにしても、念のためこれからしばらくの間は気をつけた方がいい。
私もそう思います。お昼も話をしましたけど、特に能力者である私と宮代先輩は用心した方がいいでしょうね。
I silently nodded. Normally, I'd want to practice and try to learn to better control my abilities, but it would be smarter to wait and see if the case had ended first.
よし、とりあえずしばらくは慎重に行動するってことで。
And just as we finished, we heard the sound of someone pounding the wall in the corner again.
たく、またか。おい、和樹。
She was so busy with us, though, too. She couldn't hear us again.
尾上。
オッケー。
Seneca nodded, went over to Kazuki, and took off her headphones.
おーい、花ちゃん。壁殴っちゃダメだってタクが。先輩、その人は。
ああ、有村は面識なかったっけ。和樹花1年、うちの部員だよ。
へえ、さっきまでそこにいるって全然気づかなかった。
Zen Nakata. Okay, cat. I need to brush you, don't I? Like, all furry. Arimura walked over to her.
チャオス。
Just. Huh. Kazuki bowed her head.
私、有村ひなえ。ひなちゃんとか、ひな先輩って呼んで。あなたは、花でいいよね。
She bowed again.
ごめん、声に出してもらえる？ああ、ダメだよ、ひなちゃん。花ちゃんは喋んないから。そうなの？なんで？宗教上の理由とか？理由は知らないけど、喋らないんだよね。ねえ。
She bowed.
一言も？一言も。そうなんだ。ま、それはそれでいっか。楽だし。じゃあそういうこと。お近づきの印にシェイクハンド。
Shake a hand! Kazuki was still hesitant, but Arimura grabbed her hand and swung it around. That was probably her version of a handshake. What surprised me was that Kazuki didn't seem upset. I thought that she'd resist Arimura's attempt to force them to be friends, but she seemed kind of embarrassed. But then something amazing happened.
これからもよろしくね、花。
As Arimura swung her arm around,
よろしくかも。
おい、今のって。
和樹が喋った？
the whole room shouted in amazement. We'd known Hana for about 6 months, and this was the first time we'd heard her voice. But Hana herself seemed more surprised than anyone. It felt like she didn't intend to speak, but had just been caught up in Arimura's energy.
なんだ、かわいい声してるじゃん。もっと喋ればいいのに。ねえねえ、もう一回喋って。せーの、はい。いいじゃん、いいじゃん。ちょっとだけでいいからさ。
She wasn't going to say anything else, it seemed.
まさかあの和樹が。
本当に喋れたんだね。
何よりも恐ろしいのは有村のテンションだな。
Everything we talked about that day seemed pretty important, but it was all blown away by our shock at Kazuki actually speaking.
終わった終わった。
なあ、帰りどっか寄ってこうぜ。
3 days had passed since the attack by Riko Haida. There had been no new events with the case. The police were probably still investigating Riko Haida. They hadn't announced anything else. There must have been some kind of censorship in effect because the TV shows had mostly stopped talking about it. The only people who were still talking about it were online. The wrong-siders at school seemed to have forgotten that murder occurred in this very building.
なーに、ため息なんかついて。
What is her ability? Kurusu was looking down over me. Her injury from the other day still hadn't fully healed. But Dad had told her that she'd be able to go back to school, and so today she had.
別に何でもないよ。
そんなこと言って、どうせまた何か事件が起こればいいって考えてるんでしょ。
別に考えてないってそんなこと。
いいタクル、あなた命を狙われたのよ。いくら犯人は捕まってるとはいえ、まだ安心はできないのよ。それにあの時うなずいてくれたわよね。別に特別な事件を追っていなくても楽しいことはあるって。そのことを
分かってるって。
本当に分かってるの？だったらもう。
うるさいな。さっきから分かってるって言ってるだろ。そう何度も何度も同じこと言わなくったって子供じゃないんだからさ。
Knowing Kurusu, I was ready for her to be even more annoying. But
そうね、ごめんなさい。
I wasn't sure how to react to that.
そうよね。タクルだってちゃんと考えて行動しているんだものね。私が言い過ぎたわ。ごめんなさい。でもくれぐれも危険なことはしないでほしいの。お願い。
分かったってば。
Kurusu smiled weakly, took her bag, and left the room. What was that? It was throwing me off.
タ
I ran into Sedika when I left the classroom. Actually, she was probably waiting for me.
一緒に帰ろうかなって思って。
I didn't really say anything, but Sedika started walking next to me anyway.
見てたよ、さっきの。
クルスのことか。
ダメじゃん。のんちゃん病み上がりなんだからさ、優しくしてあげなきゃ。
そんなつもりじゃ。
That's right, I hadn't meant to hurt her. But Kurusu always had to be right, no matter what. She'd been like that ever since we lived together at Alba Dorm. Sometimes it was frustrating to deal with someone who was always right. After I'd made my promise with Kurusu, I was still watching the news and looking online, but I'd been trying my best to avoid doing anything else. For the past few days, I'd been staying quiet. I'd even canceled the club meeting for today, and I was trying my best not to think about how bored I was. But the way she said it, it still made me out to be the bad guy. Oh.
どうしたの？
忘れ物。
I'd been thinking so much I'd forgotten distracted.
悪い。ちょっと取ってくるから先に帰っててくれ。
ああ、オッケー。
I've been spacing out lately. Maybe I was just too bored. Even if I'd gotten in a fight with Kurusu, I still couldn't believe I'd forget my Pokecom. Just as I grabbed my Pokecom and went to leave, I saw a familiar pair of blonde twin tails bobbing down the hallway.
有村。
She was cheerfully walking down the hall with a group of several other girls. Were they classmates or friends from her club? It was the same group of girls I'd seen before.
てかさ、この前はるかが井上と歩いてるとこ見たんだけど。
うっそ、何それマジ？はるかって白井くんと仲いいんじゃなかったの？
ちょっとひな、いつの話してんの？白井くんの後に森本くんといろいろあったじゃん。
嘘、知らない。何それ聞いてないんだけど。
まあ、ひなはいろいろ忙しそうだったじゃん。
うわー、ショックだわ。
てかさ、私もそうやって男子にモテる方法教えてほしいわ。私は別に望んでやってるわけじゃないし。
知ってるって、あれは白井の方も悪かったって話じゃん。そう、はるかがいい子だってことはうちらがよーくわかってるから。よし、そっかー。 世の中いろいろ動いてますな。
やめてよ、ババアじゃないんだから。
いやいや、私はもう若い人たちにはついていけませんよ。
何それ、ウケる。
ところでさ、いいの時間。やばー、ほんとだ。てか、ひなは行かないの？私はほら、年だから、あとは若い人に任せて。
だからそれやめてって。
じゃあまた。オッケー、アディオスグラッシャー。
Adios, gracia! Evidently, Arimura wasn't going with the rest of the group. She watched them disappear down the hallway, laughing and chattering as they went. And then,
はあ、
she sighed loudly. And then, as if she really was an old woman, she lazily put her hand on her shoulder and stretched her neck out. And then,
あ、
our eyes met.
えへへ、チャオス、宮代先輩。
おおう、
もしかして今の見てました？
今のってのはさっきの会話のことを言ってるのか、それともだるそうな態度のことか、どっちだ？
じゃあ、まさか両方見られていたとは。失敗失敗。
She slapped her hand to her forehead like a bad comedian and smiled.
その、どうして行かないんだよ。
やだな、先輩ならわかるでしょ。めんどくさいからですよ。
Her happy tone vanished, and she seemed genuinely annoyed.
みんな口先だけの上辺ばっかり。思ってもないこと言って楽しいふりして、ちょっとでも違うこと言えばそれだけで次からは仲間外れ。さっきのはるかって子は男子をとっかえひっかえ、特に人の彼氏が好きですぐちょっかい出しては別れさせて、そのくせ人のものじゃなくなった途端に飽きてすぐにポイ。他の子はみんなそれにムカついてるくせに調子合わせて笑ってる。リエにしてもマキにしてもそう。はるかのこといい子だとか言いながら、心の中ではそんなことこれっぽっちも思ってない。なのに顔では笑って適当に話し合わせて、薄っぺらい友情ごっこに興じてる。ほんとバカみたいだし気持ち悪い。あんな奴らと放課後まで一緒に過ごすなんて、考えただけで吐き気がする。
I'd heard Arimura talk like this several times before. Sometimes it had been directed at me, but it felt like she was more emotional now than she'd ever been before. Boop, boo, doo, boo. Everybody told a lie or two. But if you didn't know when other people were lying, it was still possible to trust them. Cat, 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 stop, get down, off of there. It's not gonna stop till you get off of there. Thank you. But once you knew when they were lying, once you knew what they were thinking under their smiles, could you still trust them like you did before? I didn't think I could. Maybe knowing if what you were told was true or not was a lot more painful than we thought it was. I remembered what Arimura had written for her wish during the school festival. Please let the truth be found. That tiny wish was a cry from her soul.
でも
Her voice was a whisper.
でも一番嫌いなのは、そんな人たちの中で笑顔を浮かべてる自分。
有村。
Debbie.
なんてね。
She tried to go back to her usual self and give me a mischievous wink, but she must have realized that didn't work. She scratched her head, looking awkward.
やだな、もうそんな顔しないでくださいよ。こっちが困っちゃうじゃないっすか。
なあ、 一つ聞いてもいいか？
なんです？
なんで僕にそんな話を？
え？
僕と君はまだ知り合ったばかりだろう。ついこの前まではまともに話したってできなかった。そんな僕にどうしてそんな話を聞かせるんだ？
なんででしょう。
Ordering some Starbucks.
僕が君と同じギガロマニアックスだからか？
そうっすね。まあそれもあるかもしれないですけど、
けど
多分先輩が分かりやすいからじゃないっすかね。
分かりやすい？
わかりやすい。
僕が？
宮代先輩って感情がすぐに表に出るでしょ。嘘ついたらすぐにテンパるし。
バカ言うな。僕は常にポーカーフェイスな男だぞ。そんなわけあるはずがないだろ。
ほらそうやって慌てる。
違う、今のはただ。
ほうほう。ただ
ほうほう
なんです？
It felt like the more I tried to respond, the more I was digging my own grave.
あ、いた。おーい、タク。
Sedeka came back. She must not have gone home after all.
尾上？あ、なんだよ。お前も忘れ物か？
もう違うよ。タクが遅いから様子見に戻ってきたんじゃん。
Sedeka ran up to me and pouted.
先に帰ってろって言っただろ。
それはそうだけどさ。ほら、タク、今朝言ってたでしょ。そろそろスマホ買わないとって。もし行くなら一緒に行こうと思って。
Come to think of it, I never did find my phone. According to Shinjo, that Yamazoe girl had thrown it away. As for the photo, it was sad, but if it wasn't coming back, there was nothing I could do about it. I talked to Sedeka this morning about how I needed to get a new one, but
あ、ひなちゃんだ。
you just noticed her?
チャオス、セリ。
Chasu.
チャオス。ひなちゃんも行く？スマホ買いに。
おいおい、何勝手に今日行くことにしてるんだよ。
お？違うの？
Well, whatever.
私は遠慮しとく。友達に会っちゃったら気まずいし。そう？よくわかんないけど、残念。そんじゃ、私はこれでドローンします。アディオスグラッシャー。
Adios, gracia! This time she posed like a salaryman ninja from an old manga, and then skipped off toward home.
なあ、尾上。
お？
僕って分かりやすいか？
She didn't hesitate at all.
どうしたのタク？落ち込んじゃって。
なんでもないよ。
I'd always considered myself inscrutable and mysterious, so that was a bit of a shock.
それにしても、ひなちゃんって面白いね。
Holy shit. Jesus.
そうか？
タクだって楽しそうに話してたじゃん。
Fun? Me? Talking to Arimura? Sure, that whole "you're going to be killed" thing when we first met scared the hell out of me. But when I actually talked to her, I found out she wasn't that scary at all. I was never really good at dealing with normies. In the common sense of the word, mind you, not the superior original sense. But Arimura felt different than the others. Part of it was that she was a gigglomaniac too. But the biggest reason was probably that she was always keeping her distance from other people. She kept a comfortable distance to avoid making anybody upset. She learned how to do that through long practice, and in that sense,
楽しいというか、まあ嫌じゃないのかもな。
そっかそっか。
soka soka.
なんだよ。だからなんで嬉しそうなんだ？
別になんでもない。 それよりスマホを買いに行かないの？
うん。やっぱ今日はやめておくことにする。
そうなの？なんだ、じゃあ先に帰ってればよかった。
Yeah, well, that's what I told you to do.
だからそう言っただろ。
There still might be a lot of sumo stickers in town. I should stay put for a while.
つまんない。じゃあのんちゃんでも誘って会期祝いに甘いものでも食べに行こっかな。
そうしてやってくれ。クルスも喜ぶだろ。
オッケー。じゃあまたね、タク。
ああ。
Now then, maybe I should go home and read the latest edition of Cool Cat Press, which Gen brought me yesterday. 2005. Smiles. There were always smiles in Animura's family back then.
ほらひな、口の周りにクリームついてるぞ。
嘘、お兄ちゃん取って。
お兄ちゃん取って。
しょうがないな。ほら取れたぞ。
ありがとうお兄ちゃん。
ひなえは本当にお兄ちゃん子だな。
そうね。でもしんごちゃんがひなちゃんの面倒を見てくれるから助かるわ。
これからもひなえのこと頼んだぞ、しんご。
Mom and Dad were both busy with work. Sometimes they'd have to sleep at the company, and they didn't spend a lot of time at home. But when they were with the family, they always smiled. And Hinae had a big brother, too. Just having her brother by her side was enough for her not to feel lonely. She could, and did, believe she was part of a happy family. For young Hinae, that was her whole family. That was what was true for her. One day, Hinae was bullied a little at school. It started with something small. Someone said that they lost the basketball game in gym class because of her. Hinae was a tiny little girl, and the big ball scared her. When they passed it to her, she ducked away. Same. When her brother Shingo saw she was down, he immediately asked her,
どうした？もしかしていじめられてるのか？
Hinae shook her head.
違うよ、いじめられてなんかない。
She was embarrassed. She didn't want her family to know that someone was mad at her for something. So she lied. But her brother had known immediately that she wasn't telling the truth.
ひなえ、嘘はダメだぞ。嘘だけはついちゃいけないんだ。そんな卑怯な人間になっちゃいけない。
It was the first time she'd seen her brother look so strict. Her brother hated lies more than anyone. She'd been so impressed by her beloved brother that she'd sworn to herself that she'd never tell a lie. She couldn't grow up to be a coward. She wasn't going to tell any lies.
本当はね、私。
Hinae told her brother everything. That she'd been bullied at school. That it was over something that had happened at gym class.
だったら兄ちゃんと練習しようか。
いいの？
当たり前だろ。上手くなればきっとみんなも怒ったりしなくなる。
With her brother's help, Hinae got over her fear, and the bullying stopped, and her friends came back. She came to love her brother even more. But one day, Hinae realized that all her happiness was an illusion. It started when she witnessed her parents cheating. Four days had passed since we'd been attacked by Rika Haida. But there had been no developments in the case.
で、どうする？おい、聞いてんのかよ、宮代。
聞いてるよ。これからの新聞部の方向性だろ。
ったく、分かってんならそう言えよ。ボケーっと窓の外なんか見て気の抜けたあくびしやがって。
I was bored. It had been a month and a half since the Don't Look at Me case. So much had happened, and everything had suddenly come to a halt. I wasn't sure how to handle all this peace and quiet. Part of me was hoping that there'd be some new development, and part of me was thinking that maybe this was just how it was going to come to an end.
まあ、女帝との約束もあんだろうし、しょうがないっちゃしょうがないんだろうけどさ。
別にそういうんじゃないよ。ただ何も起きなければ動きようがないってだけだ。
In fact, the whole madness with the sumo stickers was starting to recede as well. According to Sedika, all the stickers that had been covering the city had been removed when she'd gone into town yesterday. The government must have taken them down or something. Since just seeing them was enough to make me sick, I was pretty glad, but...
あれは
I looked down out the window and saw an unusual pairing.
どうした？
いや、
ああ、なんだ、有村に和樹か。
珍しい組み合わせだなと思ってさ。
確かにな。でもこの前のことあっただろう。ほら、有村の勢いに思わず和樹がって。
And Kazuki had talked, huh?
そういや、あれはさすがの僕も驚いたな。なんだって初めてのことだったから。
だな。今まで笑い声は聞いたことあっても喋ってるところなんて聞いたことなかったし。
Arimura and Kazuki were talking happily, but from here I couldn't hear what they were saying. And from the look of it, Arimura was doing all the talking, and Kazuki was just shaking and nodding her head. But she didn't seem upset or bothered at all.
そういや最近仲いいじゃないか、有村と。
はあ？
What was he talking about?
とぼけんなって。この前も放課後に二人で楽しそうにしてたって聞いたぞ。
Sedika must have told him. God, where did she get these ideas?
別に特別仲がいいってわけじゃない。ただ有村はほら、言ってみれば同類みたいなもんだろ。だからそれなりに話したってする。その程度だ。
なんだよそれ、もったいねえな。
もったいないって何がだよ。
知らねえの？有村ってあいつ結構人気。
人気？人気って要するに男子の間でってことか。
だってほら見ろよ。見てくれだってまあそこそこレベル高えし、誰とでも明るく接するタイプじゃん。
それはあいつの能力が。
そんなのはどうだっていいんだって。みんな知らねえんだからさ。要は受け取る方がどう受け取るかってことだろ。
That made sense, maybe. Arimura was just trying to avoid making enemies, but on the other hand, that meant making friends.
にしてもお前ほんとそういうの疎いよな。それでよく人のこと情弱だなんだ言うぜ。まったく。
あのな伊藤、勘違いしているようだから一石ぶってやろう
No,
か。
no, another lecture.
言っておくけど、誰かが人気だとか誰と誰が付き合ってるとか、そうした情報なんてこの碧峰学園というほんの小さなコミュニティ内での些細でどうでもいい情報でしかない。そんなこと知っていたところで真の状況とは言えないし、ましてや物事の真実を見極めるような大舞台は待っていないぞ。せいぜいがギャルゲーの中での親友ポジション止まりだ。
Yeah.
誰がギャルゲーの親友キャラだ。誰が。
Anta.
さっきのお前の発言なんてそのものじゃないか。
言われてみりゃ確かにそんな発言だったような気がしてきた。
はい。はい。
ほら、どうでもいいことで落ち込むな。授業始まるぞ。
Oh god, the bell in the background, like... It sounds like it's coming from over here. So I thought it was like actually like a doorbell. And I was like, wait, I don't even have a doorbell. Ito looked really depressed for some reason. I tried to cheer him up, then looked back out the window. Animura and Kazuki were gone.
タク、今日は部活あるの？
Sedika came by as soon as school was over.
特に何をするってのもないけど、一応部室には行こうと思ってる。それにしてもお前早いな。
お？うん。今日はなんか授業が早く終わったから。
まあいいや。それじゃあ部室に。
チャオース！
Ciao. Now it was Arimura's turn to barge in. She opened the door as energetic as ever. At the same time, the whole class started to stir.
おい、あれ有村ひないだろ、2年の。
ほんとだ。俺ああいう裏表なさそうな元気な子って好みなんだけど。
つうか
うちのクラスに何の用だ？
Don't laugh at me.
宮代先輩は、あ、いたいた。
Ita, ita. Everyone was surprised to see her walk straight over to me.
はあ、嘘マジで。
つうか、なんで宮代みたいなやつのとこに。
Oh. I don't remember if did I? Yeah, I didn't save after the last one, so. Okay, save. Yeah.
宮代先輩、チャオっす。
おおう。
What Ito had been saying was evidently true. I could feel all the boys in the class glaring at me. It kind of made me feel superior.
あ、セリも来てたんだ。チャオっす。チャオっす。
At some point, Sadika had started copying Adimura's greeting.
ところで有村までどうしたんだよ、わざわざ。
やだな。私がここに来る理由なんて一つしかないじゃないですか。
One reason?
タクル王子、お迎えに上がりました。
ファお王子。
What was she talking about?
やはり記憶をなくされてしまっているのですね。では仕方ありません。説明を。
His positive delusions
説
are almost
明な
all
ら私がするよ、タク。
おのえ。
実は今まで黙っていたけど、私たちは地球より360万光年離れた惑星ギガローマからやってきた宇宙人なんだよ。そしてタク、あなたも。
僕が宇宙人？
そう。惑星ギガローマは6つの王国に分かれています。そのうち5つの国は女系国家。そして唯一男性がいる国がタクル王子、あなたの国なのです。
クルスまで何言ってるんだ。大丈夫か？気は確かか？
信じられないのも無理ないよね。でもこれは事実なんだよ。
Even Kunosato? Wait, that's not what Kunosato's personality is like. What's going on here?
私たちはね、それぞれの国のお姫様で、あなたの妃の座を射止めるために留学先であるこの国へとやってきたの。けれどタクル王子、あなたはこの星へやってきた時にこの町で起きた地震に巻き込まれ、記憶をなくしちゃってたんだよ。
ちょっと待て、唐突すぎてついていけないんだけど。
私たちはみんなあなたの記憶が戻るまで待っていたわ。けどそれももう限界。そろそろ相手を決めてもらわなきゃ。私たちの国がギガローマの星そのものが消滅してしまうかもしれないの。タクル王子、私と結婚してほしいかも。
カズキ、お前もか？
私だって結婚したいです。
山添まで？
分かっていただけましたか、タクル王子。
Okay, you guys said that there were 5 countries with only women, but that's 6 girls.
あなたの将来のパートナーに、そしてその証に熱い口づけを。ちょっと待ってよ、のんちゃんだけ抜け駆けしてずるい。タクと一番仲いいのは私だもんね。えタクは私のこと選んで。
いや、ちょっと待って、選ぶも何も急すぎて何が何だか。
そんな、宮代先輩は私のことが好きなはずですね。宮代先
輩。いや、
待って、その人は私のものなの。
そのキャラ違和感ひどすぎるんですけど。
That personality just does not fit you. Exactly what I was about to say.
私のかも。
私のかも。
いいえ、私のものです。
いいえ、私のものです。
私のタクだもん。
I can't do higher voices.
私のです。
That's it.
違うわ、私のよ。
Chigawa.
私のだもん。私の
待って、みんなもっと落ち着いて。
Everyone was looking at me.
誰を選ぶの？
What do I do? How stupid. A prince? What the hell is wrong with me? Oh no. You know, Seneca just witnessed all of that, right? Seneca's been watching all of these delusions like, man, I don't even know what to make of you.
先輩、聞いてます？
That face, she's like,
ここに来た理由だよな。
例の件、なんか進展あったかなって。
いや、特に進展といったものはないよ。
私の
ありゃりゃ、そうっすか。
ありゃりゃ
残念。あれ？でもタク、今から部室に行くんじゃないの？
まあ、一応そのつもりだけど。
Seneca's like,
Hina-chan
why is
も
he
一緒に
always
行けばいい
imagining
じゃん。
these like weird freaking things?
だってタク一人じゃつまんないでしょ？
一人って、尾上は来ないのか？
Sorry, Taku, I just witnessed a really disturbing delusion of yours involving me, and I don't really want to hang out with you right now.
私は休養があったのを思い出しちゃった。
Yep, that's 100% what that means.
そっか。
ちなみにのんちゃんは生徒会の仕事で、しんちゃんも
Oh,
今日は用事があるって言ってたよ。
she totally saw his whole delusion about like putting eye drops in the tea. Oh god. Come to think of it, the two of them had disappeared.
そういうわけだから、ひなちゃん、今日はタクのことお願いね。バイバイ。セリ？
Seneca left the room before anyone could stop her. What was she doing here? Just me and Arimura were left.
別に尾上の言うことは気にしなくていいぞ。なんだよ。
先輩、忘れてません？私の能力のこと。
What was she talking about?
まあ、先輩も一人で部活ってのも寂しいでしょうし、しょうがない。付き合ってあげましょう。
おい、別に僕は寂しくなんてないし、付き合ってくれとも言っていない。
Or did I actually think I'd be lonely there by myself? No, but that's...
はいはい、わかりましたわかりました。それじゃ、レッツゴー。
Arimura wrapped her arm around mine and dragged me out of the classroom before I could protest any further. Seeing the jealousy in the other boy's eyes made me feel kinda good.
あれ？
Oh. Alright, 1 second. My food is at the door. I'll be right back. No, I already had dinner. This is just, you know, cappuccino type thing. AKA dessert. When I got to the club room, I was surprised to see that someone was already there.
あれ、花。なんだ、来てたんだ。
Kazuki was playing her game like always. When she saw us, she nodded slightly.
なになに、何やってるの？
What
ま
did
た
I
演
have for
出？
dinner? Oh yeah, I had mac and cheese for dinner.
演出ってそんなにそっか。だったら私も今度やってみよっかな。
おいおい、嘘だろ。
Kazuki smiled? I'd seen her laugh when she found something funny on the night we'd stayed over for the school festival, but I'd never seen her smile so happily. Actually, she'd been talking to Arimura yesterday too.
なあ、二人ともいつの間にそんなに仲良くなったんだ。
いつって先輩も知ってるでしょ？つい最近ですよ。話してみたら意外と馬があったっていうかね。
Maybe since Kazuki didn't talk, it was easier for them to get along. Maybe they made a pretty good pair.
それにしても普段どんな話をしてるんだ？
別に普通ですよ。普通。学校であったこととかプライベートのこととか昔の話とか。
It looked like Arimura's expression clouded for a second.
まあいいじゃないですか。それより先輩、事件のこと。一応昨日の夜例の刑事さんから連絡があったんですけど。
何か新しいことでも分かったのか？
なんにも進んでないっぽいです。ほんと警察って肝心な時に役に立たないですよね。
そっか。
From what Shinja had told Arimura, the underground facility at AH Tokyo General had totally disappeared. That in itself was a big development, but it also meant that all our clues were gone. And then there was that Uki Yamazoe girl. They were looking after her at that Frisia place, but all she did was cry. They couldn't get any information out of her, or even get her to explain who she was. Since Arimura had brought it up, I was hoping there'd be some new development. I felt a little let down.
言っときますけど先輩、だからってまたいろいろと探り回ったりはしない方がいいですよ。それと例の能力ですけど、まさか使ったりしてませんよね。
No.
言われなくても大丈夫だって。
Things were calming down, and we hadn't been attacked since then. But that didn't mean the case was over.
ふむふむ。どうやら本当みたいですね。じゃあ、いい子いい子してあげます。
Ikoしてあげますよ。I knocked Arimura's hand away.
やめろって。こんなことで嘘ついたってしょうがないだろ。
でも一応念を押しとかないと、これ以上知り合いがあんな目に遭うのは嫌ですからね。
By that, she was probably referring to Kakita. Kakita was investigating the Gigalomaniacs, she'd said. He'd suspected that some huge organization was involved. But whether they were responsible for the crimes, or if it was all that Riko Haida person, I didn't know. Either way, it was probably a good idea not to do anything until I knew.
それより先輩、いい加減連絡手段なんとかした方がいいんじゃないすか？
いいんじゃないっすか？
今みたいな状態じゃ何かあった時に困るんですけど、ほら、今の私たちって一連卓勝みたいなもんじゃないっすか。
This together, huh?
どうかしました？
別に。でもそうだな。確かにそのうち買わなきゃなとは思ってるよ。
I couldn't stay without a phone forever. Without one, I couldn't call for help if I needed it.
よし、じゃあ買いに行きましょう。日曜日に決まり。
は？何勝手に決めてるんだよ。そもそもなんで日曜なんだ？
その方がいろいろ息抜きもできるし楽しいでしょ。
楽しいでしょって、もしかして一緒に来るつもりか？
だって私もたまには息抜きに遊びたいし。
それなら友達と遊びに行けばいいじゃない。
先輩が言ってる友達というのが私がよく一緒にいるクラスの子たちって意味ならまっぴらごめんです。
なんで？
楽しくないんだもん。
Fair. Yeah, it probably wasn't a lot of fun if you knew when the people you were talking to were lying to you. Wait.
それって裏を返せば僕とだったら楽しいって
ほら、先輩は私の能力のこと分かってるじゃないですか。それだけでこっちも気分的に楽なんですよ。
She's right. I couldn't lie if I knew she could tell when I was doing it, and even if I did, I wouldn't be able to keep it up. That was exactly how I was acting around her right now. But didn't that mean she could have fun with anybody who knew about her power?
だったらせっかくだし尾上も誘って。
Suddenly I felt a light impact on the back of my head. I turned around and saw that Kazuki had given me a chop to the back of the head.
おい、いきなり何するんだ。
Oh, so that's it.
分かったよ。和樹も連れてけって言うんだろ。
What was going on?
尾上は誘うなってことか。じゃあクールスカ伊藤。
Kazuki's raised fist landed straight on top of my head. Evidently, she didn't want me to invite anyone.
そういうことで日曜の正午にハチ公前でアディオスグラッシャー。
有村。
Both Arimura and Kazuki had vanished before I had a chance to stop them. Sunday, in front of the Hachi statue. I didn't really have any plans. I wanted to see if the sumo stickers were gone too, so I didn't mind going. But shopping? Just the two of us? That sounded like a date.
デート。
Maybe. Even after coming home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'd been practically forced into meeting with her on Sunday. I was going out shopping with a girl. Seen from the outside, would that be considered a date? But if going shopping with a girl made it a date, then I'd been on plenty of dates with Serika and Kurusu. But a date was supposed to be the kind of thing that Cool Cat Press wrote about. That was a little different than what I'd done with Serika and Kurusu. When I went out with Kurusu, we were always going grocery shopping and stuff. I was just there to hold the bags. You couldn't call that a date. And Serika would just tag along wherever I wanted to go, whenever I wanted to go somewhere. You couldn't call that a date either. What was the exact definition of a date anyway? Two members of the opposite sex meeting at a designated time, the dictionary said. Which meant that maybe all the things I'd done so far weren't dates and what I was doing Sunday was? But wait, I couldn't get too far ahead of myself. Even if I thought it was a date, if she didn't, I'd end up looking like a fool. But still, if Arimura did think it was a date and I couldn't escort her properly, I'd still look stupid. Minamikata's column in Cool Cat Press always said that a man who couldn't make a woman happy was scum. Scum.
大丈夫。僕はリア充だ。
If it was a date, it would be good to be prepared. If it turned out not to be, I could just change my plans. If I could just get all the how-to knowledge crammed into my head.
こういう時、女の子は誘っている。
No.
女が喜ぶテクニックのすべて。
No.
モテボディの作り方。
No. Where was he? He always showed up when I didn't want him. But now that I needed him, he was nowhere to be seen.
あ、いた。 ケンさん。
おお、タクか。なんだ血相変えて。もしかして
そうじゃなくて、あれの新しいのない？
あれってなんだ？
だからほら、いつものクールキャット。
ああ、あれな。どうだろうな。
あるなら欲しいんだよ、明日までに。
明日まで？それは無理だな。
そう言わないでさ、頼むよ、俺なら弾むから。
October 18th, Sunday. The clock read 3 minutes to noon. I checked the time, took out a bottle of Mountain Dew, and took a big gulp. If I hurried, I could make it to the station in 3 minutes, so there was no need to panic. I cleared my head and opened up the March 1999 issue of Cool Cat Press that Gen had rushed out to find me. Your First Date, A Real Man's Choices. This is the article I'd been looking for. It had all the know-how I needed for my first date. Over the past 2 days, I'd gone through this and every other issue of Cool Cat Press to prepare myself. I was now the most normal of normies, the ultimate normie, you could say. And this is what my normie database was telling me. Arrive late. Not only would being late keep her in suspense, it would also heighten her excitement for the events that were about to occur. I checked the time again, and it was noon exactly.
よし、そろそろ行くか。
I took the long way around Shibuya Station and headed for the statue of Hachi. And there she was. I remembered the phrases I'd read 1,000 times last night as I got close to her. You run up to her, out of breath, and say, "I'm sorry, did you wait long?" And then she'll say, "No, I just got here." Cool Cat Press, March 1999 edition.
よし、行くぞ。
あ、
ごめん、待った。
遅い。
え？
何やってんすか先輩。女の子待たせるとか超あり。
え？あ、いや、その。
こんなところで待たせてナンパでもされちゃったりしたらどうしてくれるんですか？さっきだってもうちょっとで声かけられるところだったんですからね。
This didn't make sense. Cool Cat, what's going on?
振り返って睨みつけたらどっか行っちゃったからいいけど、あのままだとすっごく嫌な思いするところだったじゃないですか。
ごめん。
まあいいです。次からは気をつけてくださいよ。
はい、わかりました。
That one just didn't happen to work out. Next time it would work for sure.
そういえば、その服なかなかいいな。
Cool Cat dating tip number 2. Praise her outfit. Every girl loves compliments. Her clothes, her hairstyle, it doesn't matter what, just tell her it looks good.
あれ？この服、前も着てましたけど？
そうだっけ？
まったく、それって全然私に興味ないってことじゃないっすか。
そんなことは。あ、そういえば髪型、前髪切った？
切ってません。
It failed again. What is going on, Cool Cat?
そんじゃ、行きましょうか。
そうだな。それじゃあまずは、あれ？
Anima had started walking before I could say a word.
おい、どこ行くんだ？
どこって、スマホ買いにでしょ？
え？
先輩のってどこのでしたっけ？それとも DayU？ ハドバン？どっちにしてもこっちですよね。あ、ひょっとして格安の SIM フリー端末ですか？だったら。
あ、いや、こっちで大丈夫だ。
そうですか。じゃあ行きましょう。
Anima nodded and started walking again. That's right. I'd been so focused on the word date that I'd forgotten why I'd originally come here. It didn't take too long at all to get a new smartphone. Once I picked out the phone and re-registered my number, I was able to pull most of my old data off the cloud. My photo was gone, but unfortunately, there's nothing I could do about that.
オッケー、ちゃんと登録しました。これで何かあった時も連絡取れますね。
The first thing I did once I got my new phone was to add Arimuno's number. The problem was what to do now. I'd accomplished my goal for the day. I couldn't just let all the know-how I'd built up on how to be a normie go to waste. First, I needed to confirm that she didn't have any other plans.
あのさ、有村。この後だけど。
で、どうしますこれから。だって時間はまだまだたっぷりありますよ。せっかく出てきたんだし、このまま帰っちゃうのももったいないじゃないすか。
そうだな。有村さえ良ければこの後どこかに行くってのもありかも。
I almost woke up before I could finish.
じゃあどうしましょう。ちょうど時間的にお腹も空いてきたし、なんか食べにでも行きます？
Save. This is perfect. I'd had my eyes on a couple of restaurants just in case this happened. At times like this, it was important to pick a place that a girl would like. That was what a normal boy had to be able to do. The problem was that there were too many good options to choose from. There was the time to consider, the location, and the weather and temperature. Cool Cat had insisted that I take all of these into account. At this hour, every place would be pretty crowded. We should go someplace pretty late then. For example, something we could buy and then walk around and eat. Which meant...
ここですか？
ああ、ここで売ってるキャラメルポップコーンが美味しいらしいんだ。
へえ、宮代先輩って思ったより流行りとか詳しいんですね。
ま、僕はリア充だからな。待っててくれ。ちょっと買ってくれよ。お待たせ。わ
あ、甘い匂い。美味しそう。
さあ、食べたまえ。
いただきます。はん。おいしい。なにこれ。これ超美味しいです。
だろ。
Hina is cute. I hadn't spent the last 2 days looking it up for nothing.
先輩もどうぞ。はい。
うん。
どう？美味しい？
うん。美味しいです。
I was stammering.
じゃあ今度は先輩から。
え？
Adorable. Why was this so exciting? This is totally different than going shopping with Seneca and Kurusu. Was this what a date was like?
あ、先輩の手、ポップコーンの粉がいっぱいついちゃってます
よ。She's gonna.
本当だ。
ほら、
Do we get a picture? 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 Before I could even think about what she meant, she grabbed my hand and stuck my fingers in her mouth. Okay, no picture, but still.
これで綺麗になりました。
おお。
Did the normies do this sort of thing all the time?
ねえ先輩、ひなえ、この後買い物に付き合ってほしいな。
買い物？いいけど。
やったー。実はね、買おうと思ってたものがあったの。
Something she was thinking about buying?
こっちです。
She wouldn't tell me what it was that she wanted to buy. But we kept going further into an area meant for girls, and I was starting to feel more and more awkward.
ランチが重かったらやめよっかなーって思ってたんですけど、よかった軽いもので。あったあった、ここです。
え？ここって。
Let me guess, lingerie.
先輩、まだ目を開けちゃダメですよ。
うん。
よいしょ。はい。じゃあお願いします。
Oh, bathing suit.
先輩、どうしました？
It's not even
これは
covering
ま
her.
ずいんじゃないのか。
It's not even covering.
バレなきゃ大丈夫ですって。
Still. Okay, it's not even covering. It's not even covering. So, is it really okay for the two of us to be in the same changing room in the swimsuit area together? I know this. There's a word for this situation. I think it's SNEG. What's that mean? Short for Sore Nante Arage, or what kind of H game is that? Internet slang used to refer to situations commonly seen in hentai games. Hi.
それよりほら先輩、後ろ早く結んでくださいよ。じゃないと水着ずり落ちちゃう。
Yeah. Girls know how to tie it themselves, okay?
いいのか。
いいも何も早くしてくれないと。
Nope, that's not gonna happen. But it might be something close.
とりあえず何系がいい？この辺ならいくつか候補が。
じゃあお任せします。
そうか。
I called up the map I had in my head.
じゃあ、あそこに行ってみようか。
ここですか？
あれ、確かここだと思ったんだけど。
Where I thought I'd find an Italian restaurant with a delicious lunch menu, I found a ramen place. And there was a big line too.
ラーメンですか。まあ嫌いじゃないですけど、さすがにこの列は。
だよな。
This didn't make sense.
そうだ。この近くにもう一軒あったと思うんだけど。
Right up this way.
現在乾燥中。
Grr, it didn't say that online. I started to get a bad feeling. My reputation as a right-sider was in danger.
待て、確かまだ他にも。
私、あそこがいいな。ほら、いつも行く
あのって、ラックスか。
あそこって月替わりのランチやってるでしょ。私、今月のまだ食べてなくて。
Well, he had a delusion where she took him into a changing room and her bathing suit top fell off.
お主らか。今日は二人か。いつもの席が空いておるぞ。
The waitress let us inside.
マウンテンビューとオレンジジュース、マンスリーランチ2つじゃの。しばし待つがよい。
We ended up coming here, huh?
やっぱり行き慣れたところの方が安心しますよね。
そうだな。
もしかして落ち込んでます？
落ち込む？なんで僕が落ち込まなきゃならないんだよ。
マニュアル通りに行かなかったから？とりあえず褒めてみたり、道路歩くときに車道側歩いたり、人気のお店をリサーチしたり。
違うぞ。それはリア充である僕にとって自然と備わっていることであって、別に特別リサ。
やっぱしてたんですね。
That's right. I was talking to Animura. There was no point in trying to lie.
まあそんなことだと思いましたよ。だっていつもの宮代先輩と違うんだもん。
Come to think of it, Animura had said something similar before.
僕ってそんなにわかりやすいのか。
すっげすけです。でもそれって悪くないですよ。
気休めはいいよ。わかりやすいとか言われて喜ぶやつなんていないだろう。
気休めじゃないですよ。少なくとも私にとっては一緒にいて安心できるってのは大きいです。
それって。
ほら来ましたよご飯。ほれ注文の品じゃ。心してく。おいしそう。いただきます。
いただきます。
先輩食べないんですか？
いや食べるよ。
Yeah. How was I supposed to interpret what she just said? I kept thinking throughout the rest of lunch, but I never came up with an answer.
先輩、まだ時間ありますよね。もうちょっと付き合ってもらってもいいですか？
ああ。
そんな身構えなくてもいいですって。別にどこに行くとか考えず自然で行きましょう。自然で。
And so I ended up walking around the city of Shibuya with Arimura without doing a single item on my date plan.
あ、
That's the best
あ
kind
れ
of date,
可愛く
though.
ないですか？
Was there any point in just wandering around with no plans or goals? I wasn't sure, but
先輩はどういう服が好みです？
そうだな。僕は
やっぱ露出多めなのか？
違う、そういうのは
ふーん。
まあ嫌いじゃないけど。
素直でよろしい。
I was surprised to find that part of me was enjoying it. Maybe that was just because there was no point in trying to pretend to be someone I wasn't around Arimura.
次はどこ行きましょうか？
But it wasn't just that.
そういえば先輩、知ってます？この裏に
おい！
Suddenly, Arimura fell forward and almost tripped. I quickly grabbed her hand. Glabbed.
間一髪。
こんな何もないところで転ぶとか年なんじゃないのか？
しっけえな。先輩より若いですよ。まあでも一応お礼言っときます。
うん。
I felt a little awkward somehow and went to let go of her hand.
もうちょっとこのままでもいいかな。
Fortunately, I still didn't have the courage to let go of her hand. Things started to feel awkward and embarrassing.
ね、あの二人見て。仲いいよね。私たちもあの二人みたいになりたいね。
I could hear people whispering as we passed them. Normally, I would have quickly moved away. But today, for some reason, it didn't bother me.
なんか不思議。
何か？
私って普段はね、いつも自分を装ってるんです。だからそのせいで本当の自分っていうのがわからなくなっちゃうんですよね。普段友達とおどけている時の自分、それとも思ってもないことを言われてムカついてる時の自分、それでも笑顔で笑ってる時の自分、どれが本当の私なのって。でもなんか先輩といると自然な自分でいられる気がします。これが本当の自分だったのかなって。
I suddenly realized that Arimura hadn't been overly energetic today, or cold like she was when we first met. If this was who she really was, then maybe I could feel relaxed when I was around her too. It was a different kind of peace than I felt with Sedekan Kurusu. Maybe it was just a kind of sympathy because we were both psychics. But part of me didn't think that was so bad.
それじゃあ今日はここで。ありがとうございました。楽しかったです。
こっちこそ。
Alright, so we just had really wholesome things, so I feel like now everyone's gonna die. Arimura and I had both seemed to forget that the whole point of this was just to get a new smartphone.
それじゃあまた。
うん。また。
Arimura smiled a little and disappeared into the Shibuya streets. She didn't say her usual goodbye, but that was probably because this was who she really was. I could still feel her warmth in my hand when I closed my fist. Hinai Arimura said her goodbye and walked a while before turning back. She could see Takaru and Miyashiro standing in the crowd. What she just told Takaru was how she really felt. Until now, whenever she'd been talking to a friend, or to a boy, she'd always pretended to be someone she wasn't. It was the same with her uncle's family, who she was staying with. Her uncle and his wife were basically good people, but she knew that at times they felt sick of her. Sometimes other people's feelings could be like a knife in your heart. And when they were good people, that only made it worse when you found out they didn't really mean what they said. And I had been dealing with that for years. My throat hurts. And now, for some reason, when she was with Takeru, she felt better. Of course, she hadn't felt that way when she'd met him at first. She hadn't liked him at all, in fact. He was a coward and a smart aleck. That first impression was probably right, but she could feel something delicate within him that went beyond all that. She might have seen a piece of herself in him. The way he panicked or tried to force himself to pretend that he was calm. She found herself laughing when she remembered that, and she laughed when she saw herself laughing. To Arimura, these were all new experiences. She should have been exhausted from all the walking she'd done today, but strangely, her steps were light and quick. So, that's why she was sure that someone else had done it. Just as she went to go down the stairs, she felt a small impact on her back. 2 hands. By the time she realized she was in danger, she'd already missed a step. The world spun. She could see the sky. There was a dull pain in her arms and legs, and she could hear someone running away. It took a while for her to realize that someone had pushed her. It wasn't a prank. Someone had tried to kill her. 2008.
ひなえ、どうした？食べないのか？
あらあら、今日はひなちゃんの好きなものばかりなのに。
どうしたんだよひな。調子でも悪いのか？
大丈夫。いただき
わかった。さては好きな男の子でもできたのね。
何？それは本当か？
ほら、そういう時って食べ物も喉を通らなくなったりするじゃない？
ひなえ、そいつはどんなやつなんだ？ちゃんとした男か？家は父親の仕事は？
もうあなたったら、それじゃあまるで結婚相手みたいじゃないの。そういうんじゃないわよ。
そうか。すまん。お父さん。
やだわ。でもひなちゃんもいつか素敵な人と出会えるといいわね。私があなたに出会ったみたいに。
ああ、そうだな。
Mom and Dad were smiling gently, like always. Nothing had changed. But Hinai knew now that it was all a lie. It was only by chance she'd found out. On her way back from a school trip, the bus had been stopped at a light. She'd looked out the window and seen someone who looked like her mom. At first, she thought she must be mistaken. She had to be wrong because the woman that looked like her mom was walking down the street arm in arm with a young man. She looked again and again to make sure that she was wrong, but the more she looked, the more certain she became that she was right. Hinai wasn't young enough anymore to not know what that meant. She wasn't sure if she should tell her dad. If Mom was lying to Dad, if Dad was smiling while she lied to him, that was just horrible for him. But she was wrong. Dad was cheating too.
お兄ちゃん、話したいことがあるの。
ひな、どうした？
Hinai was still too young to keep her parents' problems to herself. The only person she could rely on was her big brother Shingo. She told her brother everything about Mom, about Dad. Of course, he'd be shocked. At least, that's what she thought. So she was totally surprised by his next words.
そうか。お前も知っちゃったのか。
Her brother knew. Her brother was the one who taught her not to lie. But he'd been lying to her too. It felt like a terrible betrayal to her. Everyone was lying. Everything around her was built on a lie. Hinai wanted the truth. But what was the truth? She was too young to know. But there was one thing she did know. her brother had been hurt too. He'd been suffering alone, keeping a secret that he couldn't share with anyone. From that day on, the only truth she had was her bond with her brother. They were siblings, sharing the same pain. That bond was what kept her going. Hinaya became even more dependent on her brother, and her brother responded by coming to love her even more. When Hinaya was just a year or two from graduating elementary school, her brother said to her,
高校を出たら家を出る。だからひなも一緒に行こう。
From that day on, those words were what kept Hinaya going. Her bond with her brother, and her hopes of escaping her parents' lies. And that became her new future, her truth. But 6 years ago, on that day, that dream was destroyed. There was a dazzling light and a great shaking, and she found herself buried in the rubble. Excuse me. By the time the week was over, the return of the new generation madness was forgotten, and everyone was talking about some counterfeit food labeling that had happened last week. The criminals had taken advantage of the computer problems caused by the crash of 15, which made it a hot topic. Of course, @Channel was still talking about it, but it had started to die down. In fact, since the media hadn't reported anything about her, the message board had a new set of theories about Riko Haida, and that was mostly what they were talking about now. Time passed whether we wanted it to or not, and we students still had to go to school.
おお、宮代。よっ。
Sound.
なんだ、人か。
なんだとは朝から随分とご挨拶じゃねえか。つうか、
何って、学校に来たらここを取るのは当然だろ。当たり前のこと。
そうか？それにしてはさっきからここでキョロキョロしてたじゃんか。誰か待ってでもいんのかと思ってさ。
I hadn't even been thinking about Yuta, so I didn't notice him until he'd spoken to me. If I'd have seen him, I would have gone into the school building.
で、誰を待ってんだ？
それは、ほら、お前を待ってたんだよ。
俺を？もしかして例の事件で何か進展があったのか？
いや、そういうわけじゃないけど。
じゃあなんで？有村だ。え？
I turned around and saw Arimura right behind me.
よう、有村。
伊藤先輩。
有村、チャオス。
どうも、宮代先輩。
I'd raised my hand like an idiot. The morning autumn wind felt cold against it. Huh? I'd forced myself to match her greeting. Why was she being so cold?
お前どうしたんだその手。
I looked at her hand and saw that there was bandage wrapped around it just under her sleeve.
これはちょっと階段でつまずいちゃって。
I looked closer and saw that she was concealing some purple bruises with foundation.
それじゃあ私はこれで。
Arimura seemed a little out of it as she said goodbye and headed into the school building.
なんだよ。相変わらず愛想ねえな。と、それより話。
は？
だから、なんか話が。
僕がこんなところでわざわざ伊藤を待つわけないだろ。
は？なんだそれ。
ほら、それより早く行かないとチャイム鳴るぞ。
なんなんだよ、一体。
That was my question. She'd been smiling when I said goodbye yesterday, and now she was acting like this. In my head?
遅いな、有村。うわ、なんだ？
誰だ？
この声は有村だな。
なんでわかっちゃうんですか？つまんない。
そりゃわかるだろ。
そっか。
有村。
そうだ先輩、チャオス。
チャオス。
That's how it was supposed to go. Nothing negative was supposed to happen. And instead she'd acted like that.
女子ってわからないな。
わあ、
What? I almost leaped up when I heard a sudden yell.
どうしたのタクル。
なんだクールスか、驚かすなよ。
驚いたのはこっちよ。あなた今なんて言ったの？
Oh no, I must have been talking to myself.
いや、今のは何でも。
あ、いたいた、タク。
I felt a bad premonition. Setika's timing was a little too
お
perfect.
そうだ、ちょっと用事が。
ねえねえ、昨日ひなちゃんとデートしたんだって。デート？ひなちゃんってもしかして有村さんのこと？タクル、あなた有村さんとデートしたの？
Crap, now I had a real problem. No, forget that.
なんでそのことを尾上が知ってるんだ？
それはだって見たんだもん。
Yep, Setika is the one who tried to kill her.
見たって一緒にいるところをか？
待ちなさいタクル。ということは本当に有村さんとデートしたのね。
デートっていうか一緒に出かけただけだよ。
だからそれってデートでしょ？
This was awkward. Even if we weren't related by blood, who knew that having your family find out about your dating life would feel so awkward?
それでどうだったの？どんな服で行ったの？どこへ行ったの？何をしたの？うまくいったの？どうどう、のんちゃん落ち着いて落ち着いて。だってあのタクルが女の子とデートよ。姉としては気になるじゃない。第一それってあんな陰惨なニュースを追っているよりも全然いいことよ。セリカもそう思わない？私はタクがそれでいいなら。
What was going on here? I knew that girls like to talk about romance, but I didn't think they'd like to talk about it this much.
それでタクルどうなの？
どうって別にちょっと遊びに行っただけだし。
ちょっとってダメよ、そんな適当な態度じゃ有村さんにも失礼じゃない。
Neither Setika nor I was sure how to handle Kurusu's excitement. I did tell you no, didn't I? Or at the very least I said ew or something like that. And then suddenly she spun around.
ああそうだ、こうしちゃいられないわ。
クルス、どこ行くつもりだ？
決まってるでしょ、有村さんのところよ。弟をよろしくってきちんと挨拶しておかなきゃ。
ちょっと待て、いくらなんでもそれ早まりすぎだ。
そうだよのんちゃん、そういうのはちゃんと日取りを選んでやんなきゃ。
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure saying ew counts as a yeah, that's a bad idea, so that's not right either.
とにかく有村とはスマホを買いに行くついでにちょっと一緒にブラブラしただけなんだよ。本当だって、だから変な気を回したりとか頼むからやめてくれ。
そう。
Why did she look so disappointed?
っていうかのんちゃん、なんでそんなに必死なの？だってそういう楽しいことがあればタクルだってもう変な事件を追いかけたりしなくなるかもしれないでしょ。
なんだ、そんな理由か。
もちろんそれだけじゃないわ。もっとちゃんとした理由があるわよ。ちゃんとした理由って？それはほら、有村さんも私たちと似たような境遇だから。
似たようなってどういうことだ？
知らないの？彼女ご両親はご健在らしいんだけどね、住んでいたお部屋が渋谷地震で倒壊して、それでお兄さんが。
Her brother, the one that was friends with Kakita?
今はご両親とも東京から少し離れてしまって、彼女自身は近くの親戚のお家から通っているらしいんだけどね。でも有村さんと同じ小学校だったって子に聞いたんだけど、彼女すごくお兄さん子だったらしくて、それで亡くなった後はずっと塞ぎ込んでいたそうだから。
I had no idea that Arimura had a past like that.
別に同情とかじゃないの。ただ彼女にも頑張ってほしいなって。だから。
She suddenly grabbed me by the hands and looked straight into my eyes.
もしも何か相談があったらいつでも言うのよ。わかった？
うん。
Her demeanor was so overwhelming that I almost took a step back.
それからくれぐれもまたあの事件を追いかけたりなんてしようと思わないこと。いいわね。
わかったよ。
When I nodded, she smiled, satisfied, and finally left to go to class.
のんちゃんびっくりだね。
そもそもは尾上が余計なこと言うからだろ。
あれ、そうだっけ。
そうだよ。
でもタク、本当にひなちゃんとは何にもないの？
ないよ、そんなの。
タク？
At least not from what I'd seen this morning. That's right. It was stupid to get so excited just because I'd gone to hang out with a girl. We'd just gone shopping together. If I got excited and started obsessing over dating and girlfriends, I'd be no different than half the idiots in the school. I wasn't like those wrong-siders who spent every minute of the day thinking of girls. I spent most of my day gathering information. And I felt bad for Kurisu, but I was starting to get a little bored with the situation. Everybody seemed to think that the arrest of Riko Haida meant the case was winding down, but I couldn't be sure that it was over. If Haida was responsible for all the murders, then why did she have to kill all those people? Was it just because they were psychics? Or was she working for some organization? And how had she killed them? Why did she use her pyrokinesis? There were still tons of questions. I didn't have time to obsess over every little thing some girl did. Which meant that I had work to do. I had to go over the case again. If I was the head of a journalism club, I needed to act like a journalist. Right. I opened the door to the club room, ready to get started.
あ、チャオッス先輩。
有村、どうしてここに？
決まってるじゃないですか。先輩を待ってたんですよ。ここに来れば会えるかなって。
僕に会いに？
はい。
そう。
Eh? No. I just told myself I didn't have time to waste on girls.
今朝はごめんなさい。ちょっと考え事してたせいでそっけなかったですよね。
そんなこと。
No, there's no point in lying to Arimura.
まあ少しな。
そうですよね。でもちょっと理由があって。
理由？
言いましたよね。怪我したって。
Arimura rubbed the skin just above her knees and winced a little. I could still see a bandage under her sleeve. It didn't look that bad, but maybe she was worse off than she looked.
階段でつまずいたんだっけ？大丈夫なんだよな？
はい。怪我自体はそんなに大したことはないんですけど、ただ誰かに押されたような気がしてて。
押されたって、突き落とされたってことか？誰に？
いや、あくまでも気がしたって感じで、だからはっきりそうとは言えないんですけど、でもちょっと気になってて、それで朝は上の空になってたんです。だからごめんなさい。
それで突き落とされた後は特に襲われたりとかしてないのか？
はい、転んで階段から落ちて見上げたら誰もいなくて。
そっか。
If someone did push her, then who? Could it have something to do with the case? But compared to the other cases, that would be pretty sloppy. Was it just chance then? Or maybe she'd been mistaken?
それじゃあ私はこれで。
Animeta picked up her bag and started to walk to the door.
もう帰るのか？
はい。とにかく朝のこと一言謝りたかっただ。
そっか。
先輩がいいって言うならもう少しいてもいいかな。
え？
ダメですか？
別にダメなことないけど。
本当ですか？よかった。
No. Cute. Ah! Save. I started to feel awkward, but it wasn't a bad awkward. It wasn't that bad at all. It was kind of nice.
そうだ、怪我。怪我大したことないって言ってたけど、本当か？
はい、大丈夫ですよ。ほら、この通り。
Anima lifted up her skirt to show me. I saw.
本当は前から言おうと思ってたんですけど、私実は男の子なんです。
I was stunned. I didn't expect to see a bulge beneath Arima's skirt.
でも心は女の子なんです。信じてください。
いやー、まあこんなもの見せられたら信じるしか。
やっぱり思った通りだ。宮代先輩って
I love how Daddy sounded. I love how Daddy sounded. Okay, but combine this with his earlier delusion about her having like a yaoi book that she wants him to read, and now he's having a delusion that she's actually a boy, so she's a boy wanting him to read yaoi.
そうか。
Matsuoka sounds so dead.
はい。宮代先輩。
Animata looked straight into my eyes. She was a girl, no matter how you looked at her. Unless you look under her skirt. But her body.
何？
こんな僕でよければ恋人にしてください。
I looked closely and saw that her shoulders were shaking. It had probably taken all of her courage to say that. And I said,
先輩。
むしろ望むところだ。まさにドンピシャ。君こそ僕の求めていた理想の恋人だ、有村。
本当ですか？
本当だ。
ひなえ、嬉しい。
Animata leapt forward and grabbed me. Her body was a little more muscled than I'd expected, but it felt great. And
有村。
はい。
当たってる。
当ててるんです。
No. What was I thinking? I'm not into that. When I came back to my senses, I was looking straight at Arimura's healthy thighs.
もう先輩ったらあんまり見ちゃダメですよ。
I knew that I should probably look away, but my instincts overcame my reason.
そんなこと言ったって。
Suddenly the door opened without warning.
え？
Huh? Everything froze for a moment. Kazuki appeared for just a moment before she vanished. A moment later, I heard a furious pounding on the walls.
違うんだ、カズキ。
Who is Hohoin Kyoma's voice anyway? Hohoin Kyoma. Who plays him? Who is this guy? Soulstar. Okay. October 22nd. 4 days had passed since someone had pushed Arimeta down the stairs. Nothing else had changed for her since then. How were things between us? Well, maybe not too bad. Probably. And tomorrow was the 23rd, the day of the brain-dead incident 6 years ago. I'd spent the whole day online looking for new information, and found something interesting. It was the news that the burnt, headless body of a man had been found.
本当に行くんですか？
嫌なら無理に付き合ってくれとは言わないけど。
Animeta's expression was clouded, but she shook her head. After school that day, we'd gone to visit none other than Kuno Sato. I wasn't very happy about the idea, but it was the best way to find out about the news I'd seen this morning. Of course, Detective Shinjo probably knew more about the case, but he worked for the police. Even if we'd been attacked by Haida earlier, he probably wouldn't be willing to give us the latest information. But Kuno Sato had built up a relationship of trust with the police, and it looked to me that between the two, she had the upper hand in her relationship with Shinjo, which meant that she might know something.
じゃあ行くけど、本当にいいのか？
I asked Arimeta one last time before we went inside.
だってここ女の人の部屋ですよ。宮代先輩、そんなところに一人で行くつもりですか？
確かに女子が一緒の方が話は聞いてくれるだろうけどさ。
I didn't really like her either, and honestly, I didn't want to rely on her help, but I had no choice if I wanted that information. And I wasn't really relying on her help, I was using her.
私が言ってるのはそういうことじゃなくて。
じゃあどういうことだ？
だからいいです。なんでもないです。
If he doesn't understand what you mean, that means he's not interested in the girl, so you don't need to worry about it.
あ、おい、部屋の場所知らないんじゃないのか？
I mean, that's how it would work for me, like... I guess I'm a girl though, so I don't know, maybe guys are different, but... Arimeta stormed ahead of me, angrily. I followed after her into the apartment building.
誰だ？
僕です。宮代拓。
入れ。
入れ。Kuno Sato let us in much easier than I thought she would. I'd been worried she'd turn us away at the door, but I guess I'd been wrong.
散らかっているが気にするな。
Her room was still in terrible shape. I could see the Shibuya News screen on her PC. She looked like she was editing something. Oh, I like that outfit on her.
例の焼死体のことだな。
Kuno Sato spoke before we even had a chance.
どうしてそれを？
ギガロマニアックスのお二人がわざわざこんな手狭なところにいらっしゃってくださったんだ。他に
相変わらず嫌味な人。
ご想像の通り、昨夜の焼死体について何か情報はないかと思って来たんです。
There's no point in pissing her off if it meant we didn't get the information we needed. I quickly moved between them. This wasn't really something I was good at, but I didn't have a choice.
どこまで知っている？
その一通り情報として出ていることは。
The location was a multi-purpose building in Hatsudai. The victim was a man between his mid-30s and late 50s. He'd been burnt so badly his body had turned to ash, and the police had no idea who he was. They were working to ID him. That much had been announced this morning. I'd looked back over it just in case before I came here, and nothing new had come out.
ならばそれが全てだ。それ以上のことは一切分かっていない。
それは箝口令が敷かれているってことですか？
いや、警察の方でもまだつかめていないようだ。どうやら先月の太陽嵐の影響でまたシステムが不安定になっているのだそうだ。被害者が渋谷以外の人間の場合、紹介も一苦労らしい。システムにばかり頼りすぎるとこういうことになるという見本のようなものだな。
Since Arimeta hadn't spoken up, what Kuno Sato said was probably true.
それで久野里さんはこの事件どう見ます？
それはニュージェネの再来と 関係があるかどうか聞いているのか？
まあそういうことです。
私にはその質問に答える義務はない。
I figured. I thought she might say that, so I didn't feel surprised or disappointed. But surprisingly, she asked me something instead.
お前はどう思っている？
僕ですか？
お前もこれまでの事件を追ってきたのだろう。それならば
I don't want to disappoint
一
her,
応の
but
考
I
え
don't
は
have
あ
my
るは
thoughts
ず
on
だ。
it. I mean,
そいつを聞かせてみろ。
I mean, okay, I have thoughts on it, but they rely on future knowledge, so I can't. I don't want to use those thoughts. I hated to tell her just because she asked me, but there's no point in arguing. I decided to just tell her what I thought.
この事件にはこれまでのものと比べていくつかの相違点があります。まずは場所。
All the other incidents had taken place in Shibuya proper. Hatsuda was a part of the Shibuya ward, but most people considered it a part of Shinjuku.
それから年齢の問題。
All the previous victims had been in their teens or early 20s. This time the victim was middle-aged. He was closer to Dad's generation than ours.
つまりこれまでの事件とは無関係だということか？
そう考えていいんじゃないかと。
The fact that the body had been burnt to death made me think of Riko Haida. But Haida was in police custody right now. She couldn't be responsible. And today was the 22nd. It was one day too early for the brain dead case.
そこまで結論が出ているのならわざわざ私に聞く必要もないだろう。
じゃあ
そもそも今のところ30代以上でのギガロマニアックス発症例はない。ということは少なくとも被害者はギガロマニアックスではないということだ。
In other words,
偶然か便乗か。いずれにしてもこれまでの事件とは無関係だろうな。
とりあえず関係ないってのは一安心だな。
嘘。
え？
先輩、本当はもう少し事件が続いてくれてもよかったのにって思ってるじゃないですか。
I hadn't realized it, but if Arimura said so, then maybe I did. Maybe I wanted something to happen to break the boredom.
私はまだ安心できません。だって。
Arimura squirmed uneasily. It made sense. Just the other day, someone might have pushed her down the stairs.
ごめん、そんなつもりじゃなかった。
いえ、私の方こそちょっと過敏になってるのかも。
送るよ。
ありがとうございます。
Arimura held my hand the whole way back. Her hand felt tiny and very frail. The next day was the 23rd. That was the day of the brain dead incident 6 years ago. Nothing interesting happened in Shibuya that day. November 6, 2009, Friday. Wow, we just skipped a lot of time. Oh wait, no. This is back in time. I mean, yeah, we skipped a lot of time, but backwards. Hinai Arimura was in downtown Shibuya when it happened. Her brother's birthday was in a week. What should she get him for a present? She had taken the allowance she'd saved up over the last several months and gone into the city alone. Every year, she and her brother would both celebrate each other's birthdays, just the two of them. Hinai would give her brother a present, and he'd say thank you and give her something back, even though it wasn't her birthday. It always made her so happy. What should she get him this year? She wanted to get him something he would keep forever. Something he could wear would be best. Clothes were outside her budget, and gloves or a muffler would only be useful in winter. What about a wallet? Just when she decided to go into a slightly grown-up department store, the huge earthquake struck Shibuya. It was the disaster they called the Shibuya earthquake. Hinai didn't really remember the moment it happened. 1 second, there was a bright light that flooded her field of vision, and the next second, everything had changed. The walls of the buildings had collapsed. The asphalt had split open, and here and there she could hear people moaning in pain. It was like something out of a dream, or a nightmare. She didn't know what had happened. She quickly dialed her brother, but not only did he not pick up, she couldn't even hear it ring. Since she had nothing else to do, she decided to head for home. Only when she stood up did she realize that she'd been hurt all over. Her knees were cut open, she'd hit her back, she'd scraped her cheeks against the ground, and all of Shibuya was in a panic. The buildings looked like they could fall down at any moment. A cart smashed into a store and was giving off black smoke. Everyone in Shibuya was running to the station in search of a way out. It was hard for tiny little Hina to go against the crowd, and she was almost pushed down many times as she headed for home. She didn't honestly remember how long it took her to get back to the condo where she lived. She just remembered that she'd felt so tired. But when she saw her condo building, all that exhaustion vanished. The building hadn't collapsed, but it was tilting and looked like it could fall over at any time. The people who'd escaped from inside were standing a good ways away and looking up at it. Some people tried to go inside to get their valuables. Others tried to stop them. She saw her parents there. Maybe they'd happened to come home early, or maybe they'd raced over here after the earthquake. Either way, they were injured, but all right. But there was someone missing. She looked around and didn't see him. Her parents didn't answer, but she could tell where her brother was from where her mom was looking. The condo building was tilted and it could fall over at any time. Who knew what was going on inside? Her father slowly shook his head.
お兄ちゃんはもう
She dodged past her father's outstretched hands and ran into the building. Of course, the elevator didn't work. She ran up the stairs, which were only barely still functional, and headed for her condo. All the exhaustion she'd felt was totally gone. All she was thinking about was her brother. All she wanted was for him to be safe. Their condo was a disaster. There was no sign left of the life they'd live. But that didn't matter to her. She screamed, again and again. She heard a small moan from under the rubble. She ran over and saw her brother. He was alive. Her brother was alive. She swallowed her words. Her brother's body was half buried under rubble, and he couldn't move. She tried to lift it off, but she was far too weak to even budge it.
無理だヒナ。それよりお前は逃げろ。ここももう。
She tried so hard to move the rubble that her nails broke and blood began to drip from her fingers, but she still kept trying. Her mom and dad had betrayed her. The one bond she had, the one truth she had, was her brother. It was the one thing that kept her going. But
ごめんヒナ。違うんだ。
she didn't know why her brother was suddenly apologizing.
僕たちは兄弟なんかじゃない。お前と僕は本当は純粋な兄弟なんかじゃないんだ。
It was a sudden confession. What was he talking about? They weren't brother and sister? What did he mean? He kept talking even though Hina didn't understand what he was saying.
ヒナ、お前は母さんと父さんの子じゃない。別の男との間の子だ。
Suddenly the whole world went black.
ずっと言うべきじゃないって思ってた。隠しておくべきだって。お前が大きくなるまでは。でももう。お兄ちゃん。ごめんヒナ。ずっと隠していて。
It was a shock. She wasn't her mom and dad's daughter. Her brother wasn't her real brother. But the biggest shock to Hinai was that her brother had been lying to her. After all the times he told her not to lie. He'd said he wouldn't lie to her anymore, but he'd been concealing something so important. She couldn't believe it. It was a cry from her heart. And then she saw something in the corner of her eye. It was twisted and beautiful. It was like some kind of enchanting creature, but cold, like something inorganic. Something like a sword.
ごめんひなでもこれは本当のことなんだ
Suddenly she knew he was telling the truth. It wasn't just intuition. She knew. She knew somehow. For some reason, she knew that his words were true. As she stood there in shock, suddenly she was knocked backwards and almost fell to her feet.
ここは危ない行けひな頼むお前だけは生きてくれ
There was truth in his cry. She staggered back just as the roof in front of her fell in. The dust rose up so thick she couldn't see her brother anymore.
逃げろ逃げるんだひな
Those were the last words she ever heard him say. October 26, 2015, Monday.
ねえ聞いたあれって D 組の子でしょ
私1年の時同じクラスだったんだけど
The whole school was talking about a new incident that had taken place.
もうみんな知ってると思うが、新たな事件が起きた。しかも被害者は碧峰学園の2年生女子、つまりこの学校の生徒だ。
Because of that, we'd had an emergency assembly this morning. The school staff was busy dealing with the second big incident after the Watabe case, and most classes were study halls. They should have just made it a half day, but since the media were outside, they kept us until the full day was over. It was only after school that we were able to have our meeting. Here's what we knew about the case. According to the police announcement, the murder took place sometime after 11 p.m. last night. Shibuya was always pretty busy even at that hour, but the area where the murder took place was isolated, and at times could be almost empty. The cause of death was blood loss. The victim had been stabbed multiple times with a sharp blade, and the area around her was said to be a sea of blood.
この事件、どう思う？
Like always, Ito was the first to answer.
どうってのは、これまで起きたニュージェネの再来と同じかどうかってことか？
もちろんそれも含めて、いろいろだよ。
関連があるかどうかって言われたら、明らかに違うだろう。
どうしてそう思うの？
どうしても何も、そもそも起きた日が違う。それに明らかに手口も普通だ。猟奇性の面から見ても
Katsuki was actually involved in the conversation for once. She nodded in agreement, but Kurusu shook her head.
何言ってるの刃物でめった刺しなんてそれだけで十分猟奇的じゃない。
いや、そりゃそうだけど、俺が言いたいのはつまりこう方向性みたいな、犯罪の醸し出す色っつうか雰囲気っつうか、要するに不可解なところがないってこと。
確かに手を切って食べたとかお腹の中にスピーカーがとかそういうの
だろ。だからやっぱ関係ないんじゃねえの？
Evidently, everyone agreed with Ito's opinion.
宮代、お前はどうなんだよ。
Stabbing is a pretty normal way to die.
僕も伊藤と同じ意見だ。残念ながらこれまでの事件とは無関係だと思う。
ちょっとタクル、残念ながらってどういうこと？
Hi, hi. See, if it's related, you only have one murderer around. But if it's unrelated, you have two murderers. So obviously, it's better for it to be related. Crap, I'd accidentally said what I was thinking.
いい？あなたは狙われたのよ。下手をしたらあなたが面白がっているその被害者の人たちと同じようになっていたかもしれないのよ。わかってる？
わかってるよ。
Here we go again.
そもそも今回の被害者はこの学校の生徒なのよ。同じ学校で過ごしている女の子が亡くなったの。面白がっている場合じゃないでしょ。
だから何度も言わなくったって大丈夫だってそう言ってるだろ。
I was good to sit here at the newspaper club when a student from our school was dead anyway.
今私たちがするべきことは全校生徒に注意を促すための記事を書くこと。これは先生方からも頼まれた新聞部としての役目なの。これはそのための会議なんだからそこを忘れないで。
分かってるってば。
それから
生徒会会長のクルスさん、至急生徒会室まで来てください。繰り返し。
ほら呼んでるぞ。
それじゃあ言ってくるけど、くれぐれも今言ったこと忘れちゃダメだからね。
Kurusu nagged me one more time before she ran out of the room.
のんちゃん、忙しいのにわざわざ来てくれたんだね。
それだけ宮代が信頼されてないってことだな。いや、逆に信頼されてるってことか？どっちだ？
どっちだっていいよ。それより話に戻るぞ。
Thanks to Kurusu's interruptions, I'd forgotten how much we'd covered. Oh, grass? Right.
今回の被害者はうちの2年ってことだが、有村や尾上はこの被害者の子のことは知らなかったのか？
私は1年の時何度か言葉を交わした程度なら学校休みがちな子だったみたいだし。私もよくは知らない。クラスの子の話だと学校サボって遊び回ってるって話だったけど。
Since the murder had taken place past 11 p.m., it wasn't hard to imagine.
でもちょっと怖いかも。事件のあったところって私も学校の行き帰りに通る道だし。
そうなのか？
うん、ほら言ったでしょ、この前の階段であの近くだから、ちょっと気味悪いかも。
Yeah, that's worrying. Somebody had tried to push Arimura down the stairs. Given that it was near the scene of the murder, maybe it was just some sicko trying to kill little girls. Are you really gonna call the girl you want to date with a little girl?
やっぱ今回のは今までのとは関係ないってやつだよ。言い方は悪いが、遊び歩いてた女がたまたま変質者にやられたか、あるいは地上のもつれってところか。
いくらなんでもそれはないよ。だって高校生だよ。地上のもつれって言ったら、その男子と女子がそのゴニョゴニョなことでしょ。
ゴニョゴニョ。
小学生かよ。高校生にもなりゃ地上でもつれることだってあるだろう。
そうなの？世の中の高校生はそうなの？もつれちゃうの？ねえ。
そりゃ子供じゃないんだし、そういうことだってあるんじゃないか。
そうなんだ。じゃあ花ちゃんもつれちゃったりするの？
She frantically denied it. Yeah, that wasn't gonna happen with Kazuki. Anyway, we were getting off track.
しかしまあ、同じ学校のやつが殺されたってのは気持ちいいもんじゃねえよな。
A student from my school. In that sense, this victim was the one who had been closest to us. What did that mean?
すっかり遅くなっちゃいましたね。
うん。
考えてみればもう11月ですもんね。そういえば復興祭って来週でしたっけ？
うん。
Even if this case and the last one had nothing to do with the other murders, I was starting to think that maybe that didn't mean that the return of the new generation madness was over. At first, I thought that Riko Haida was responsible for all of them. No, I'd only been convinced of that because of the terror I'd felt after being attacked. But after I'd calmed down, it felt like there were things I couldn't explain if she was doing this on her own. And there was that underground lab, too. If an organization big enough to make something like that lab was involved, Rika Haida might just have been the tip of the iceberg. Unfortunately, the police hadn't gotten any useful information out of her, so there was no way of knowing if she was connected to something bigger or not. Even if she was responsible, we didn't know why she'd committed her murders on the same days as the New Generation Madness. Was it some kind of message? Was it to make it more sensational? Either way, if there was something bigger behind her, we'd already been a target once. Maybe we couldn't relax just yet.
も
Suddenly, somebody grabbed both my cheeks, bringing me back to my
う
senses.
さっきから話してるのに全然聞いてない。
ごめん。なんだっけ。
だから復興祭一緒に。
一緒か。
もう約束ですよ。
She looked on my cheeks and then gently rubbed them. I felt kind of embarrassed.
それじゃあ私はあっちなんで。
送っていこうか。
There was that murder yesterday, and then the thing with the stairs before it. Of course, I was a little worried too, but as a man, it was time to show off.
大丈夫です。ちゃんと人通りの多いところ通っていくから。
でも
Ah, I got a cheek kiss. Suddenly, Arimura leaned up and I felt something soft on my cheek. By the time I realized it was her lips, she had already pulled away.
アディオスグラッシャー。
Before I could say something, she'd smiled, said her goodbye, and vanished into the crowd. I was suddenly overcome by the idea that she was going to vanish forever. I drove the unpleasant thought from my head and headed for home, feeling just a little excited. I could still feel a soft warmth on my cheek. October 26, 2015, Monday. Just like she'd promised Sakura, Hinae Arimura stuck to the busy roads on her way back. She remembered Takuru's face when they'd said goodbye. He was probably scared himself, but he was holding it in and pretending to be brave. Anybody could see he was just putting on an act. He was easy to figure out, and that made Hinae feel at peace. She is about to die, isn't she? Everyone was hiding their true feelings, their truth, deep within their heart. There's nothing true in this world at all. That's what she thought that day. Never tell a lie. Her brother had been the one who taught her that, but he still didn't tell her what was really important. He didn't tell her the truth. So where was the truth? That was the question she'd been grappling with for the last 6 years.
お兄ちゃん。
A friend she'd made just recently had asked if she wanted to see her brother. Hinae almost never talked about herself, but she'd been talking about her family. And then her friend had asked her. She didn't know why, but the question had surprised her and she'd nodded yes. She didn't hate her brother for lying to her, and even if she did, he was gone. Because on that day, she'd left him to die. So instead, she felt guilty toward him. If she could meet him, she wanted to apologize. The crosswalk sign turned red, and Hinae stopped walking. Even at night. Oh no, she's gonna get isekai'd! Even at night, Shibuya was crawling with people. With this many people around, she thought, it wouldn't be easy for someone to attack her. As soon as the traffic light turned green, the cars started to move. And then... Someone pushed her hard. She staggered out into the street. The headlights were bearing down on her before she even had time to think. When she finally opened her eyes, the car bumper was just a few centimeters from her
おい
face.
大丈夫か。何やってんだよ。危ねえな。
The people waiting for the light started to make a fuss. The sound of a dozen car horns echoed off the sides of the buildings. But Hinae didn't hear any of that. She was only looking at one thing. It was the place she'd been standing a moment ago. Just before she'd almost been hit, she'd looked up and seen them. was her dead brother, Shingo. She didn't get isekai'd. I looked at the clock, and it was past 3 a.m. I'd started looking around to see if there was any new information on the case, and the next thing I knew, it was really late. But I didn't end up finding anything new, and as I read, I ended up focusing on something else. It was an article about how a company called Koshin that was involved with the Restoration Festival had put up security cameras all over town and been subject to a lawsuit. The situation had gotten pretty complicated, and by the time I'd finished reading, it was really late.
さすがに寝るか。
It wasn't true that caffeine stopped you from getting sleepy. I always drink caffeine before bed, and I was always able to sleep. But when I opened my fridge to get my late night Mountain View, I realized I had a big problem.
ない。
I'd forgotten that I drank my last bottle yesterday.
しょうがない。我慢するか。
Or so I thought, but... Once you found out that you couldn't drink something you wanted to drink, it became an obsession. That's just human nature. Caffeine was addictive. Maybe I was undergoing withdrawal. But the convenience store I'd have to go to in order to get the Mountain View was a bit of a walk from here. In the end, however, I couldn't defeat my own desires. I went out into the city late at night to get my Mountain View.
ありがとうございました。
Arigatou gozaimashita. After I'd succeeded in purchasing several bottles of Mountain View, I took one and opened it as I stood outside on the sidewalk. My body felt like it had been purified. Just as I thought that now I'd be able to sleep, I suddenly remembered all the murders that had happened so far. I suddenly felt afraid of the situation I was in. I was in Shibuya in the middle of the night, in a place that was almost empty at this hour. Suddenly fear gripped me and I started to run, only to trip on something. Evidently, I'd run into a trash can.
なんでこんなとこに。
There usually wasn't a trash can here. I felt a dull pain where my body had hit the ground. I hadn't been holding the bottle tightly, so the cap on my Mountain View had fallen off and the bottle was leaking. I sat up and stretched out my hand to grab the bottle, only to touch something else.
なんだこれ。
It wasn't a plastic bottle. It was softer. Like clay. I slowly looked up. What I saw made me gasp. It wasn't a trash can. It was a laundry basket with wheels. At first, I thought the thing that fell out from inside was a mannequin or something. It was strangely cold and a little black, but the soft feeling against my skin and the way its eyes were open told me that it was no mannequin. It was a dead body. Spent.
であるから、この場合、天 P は。
This guy's still talking about Point P.
おい、今何時だと。ああ、宮代か。座れ。
な、宮代。
知ってる知ってる。またでしょ。ちょっとすごくない？いくら空前だからって。
静かにしなさい。授業を続けるぞ。
タク
な、昨日の話早く聞かせろよ。
After I found the body in the alleyway this morning, I called the police. By the time they were done questioning me, it was almost lunchtime. I hadn't slept a wink last night, but I was feeling so tense that it didn't matter. The whole school had heard about how I'd found a body, and I could hear people talking about it as I passed them by. I could understand why. This was the third body I'd been the first person to discover. I might have been the only person in the whole wide world to discover 3 bodies in just a month. Not if you're the one killing them. The one killing them discovers them first. At this point, the police were less surprised than they were annoyed.
言っとくけど、あれは僕が自分で探したわけじゃないからな。
I just wanted my Mountain View. Kurisa had come to see me too, along with Ito and Setika. I made sure she understood the real story.
わかってるわよ。でも、どうしてあなたばっかりそんな現場に？
Because Setika's crazy.
ほんと 持ってるとしか思えないよな。
Know who else they love? Kamono Hashiran.
伊藤くん、前にも言ったわよね。人が亡くなってるのよ。不謹慎で。
と、こりゃ失言失言。
でもタクもすっかり有名人だね。
別に僕が何かやったわけじゃないけどな。
そうよ。それにこんなことで有名になったって仕方ないでしょ。
Sorry.
それはそうだけど。
それはそうだけど。
で、被害者は？
それはまだわからないらしい。
The police had said there was nothing on the body that could help them ID it. All they knew was that it was a man in his mid-40s.
なるほどな。ってことは、やっぱあれとは。
かもな。
This case was the one most similar to the return of the new generation madness. But given the victim's age and the date of the murder, it was hard to say if it was related. It was too early to say for sure, though.
それで、どんなだった？
How was it?
どんなって？
だから死体だよ。ネットで見る限りはめった刺しだったって話だけど。
暗かったせいではっきりしたことは僕もわからない。ただ触った感じからして死んでからそこそこ経ってるような感じではあった。
タク、
I wish I could make my eyes do that. She's like, I can't.
転んだ時にたまたまな。
マジか。で、どんな感触だった？
ゴムみたいな感じだな。なんかグニュッとしてて意外と硬くて。
もう、二人ともいい加減にしなさい。そんな話聞きたくないわ。
聞きたくないならどこか行けばいいだろう。
それは。
それとも本当は気になるんじゃないのか？
そんなわけないでしょ。
Hey, Anumura, we need you. I kept talking with Kurusu for a moment before someone came over from the door.
有村。
宮代先輩。
Arimura looked really tired.
どうしたわざわざ。もしかしてお前も事件のことを聞きに来たのか？
事件のこと？あれ？ひなちゃん知らないの？タクまた見つけちゃったんだって。殺人現場。え？
From the look of things, she really didn't know. Given how many friends she had, that was a little surprising. From the way the rest of the school had been talking about it, she should have at least heard something.
有村さん、どうしたの？なんだかいつもと違って元気がないみたいだけど。
Sort of boyfriend. You need to ask these questions first.
大丈夫？もしかして私たちがいると言いにくいこと？
いえ、そういうわけじゃ。
じゃあどうしたんだ？
Arima still seemed like she didn't want to talk, but eventually she slowly began to speak.
実は私、昨日襲われて。
襲われた？
Actually, she said I was attacked. Well, actually, I don't know what osoware gshow.org. Osoware. To be tormented. Osowa. Huh. Osowaru? Interesting.
マジかよ。
襲われたってことは命を狙われたってこと？
それで大丈夫だったの？
Everyone started to ask questions.
昨日って僕と別れたあの後か？
はい。あの後すぐスクランブル交差点で。
そんな人気の多いところで？
信号が赤に変わって待ってたらいきなり背中から突き飛ばされて。
Shingo. So she said Shingo, like the traffic light. And her brother is also named Shingo, although it's different kanji. So that's kind of cool. Pushed from behind. That was the same as what had happened before, which meant that it wasn't her imagination. Someone had really pushed her.
それで怪我は？もう少しで引かれるところでしたけど、なんとか。怪我もすりむいたくらいで。警察には行ったの？まだ。
どうして言わないの？
それは。
She fell silent, as if it was hard to say. Someone had pushed her out into the street, and in a busy intersection. She was lucky to survive. She could have easily been killed, and since it had happened twice now, it was obviously an attempt on her life. But she hadn't gone to the police. Was there something she couldn't tell them about?
とにかく警察に言うべきよ。なんなら私が一緒に。
あ、いえ。
有村さん？
その実は。
Before she could say something, the door to the classroom opened. It was Detective Shinjo. The whole classroom started to murmur at the sight of a strange man.
ああ、落ち着いてくれ。怪しいもんじゃない。
That's exactly what a suspicious person would say. He looked around the classroom until he found us, and then walked straight over.
ここだったか。
まだ何か？
いや、今用があるのは宮代くんじゃなく、君だ。ちょっと来てもらえるか？
Shinjo was looking in the direction of.
え？私ですか？
Arimura.
君まで来る必要はなかったんだがな、宮代くん。
Shinjo said as soon as we entered the room. But that was what Arimura had wanted. She'd wanted me to be with her when she went with the police.
もしかして君たちは、いや、今は関係のない話だ。
Shinjo seemed like he wanted to say something when he saw the two of us, but now wasn't the time.
まあいい、同席を認めよう。どうせ遅かれ早かれ、第一発見者である君の耳にも入るだろうからな。担当直入に言おう。有村ひなえさん。君には今からすぐに警察へ来てもらいたい。
警察に？
そうだ。
どうして？
落ち着いて聞いてもらいたい。
I had a bad premonition.
今朝方、渋谷の路地裏で発見された他殺体は当然知ってるな。
はい。宮代先輩が。
そう、彼が発見した遺体だ。その被害者の身元が特定された。
It couldn't be.
被害者は
Oh, it's her dad.
有村光一郎。君のお父さんだ。
Shinjo took Arimura to the police station. She didn't come back. I waited for her to get in touch with me, but not only did I not get a call, I didn't even get a text message. Of course, her father was dead and he'd been horribly murdered. I could understand why. And I had no idea that the body was Arimura's father. Of course, I had no way of knowing. So even if I couldn't help it, I still felt ashamed of having been so excited.
ごめん、有村。許してくれ。でも、知らなかったんだ。
Arimura's dad was dead. I'd never met him, but he was the closest I'd been to any of the murder victims. And yesterday was the same day Arimura said she'd been attacked. What was going on? Was she the next target? But then who? I remembered what Arimura had said this afternoon as she left the room with Shinjo.
とにかくそういうことだ。今は混乱しているかもしれんが、一応いろいろと話を聞かなければならない。それからできれば遺体の確認もお願いしたいんだが、頼めるか？
はい。
それじゃあ玄関に車を止めてやる。悪いがついてきてくれ。
有村。
兄ちゃんだわ。
え？
やったのはお兄ちゃんよ。
有村 お兄ちゃん
I'd heard her say it clearly. Her brother was the killer. What did she mean? I'd heard that her brother died during the Shibuya earthquake. Or did she mean another brother? Or maybe he was actually alive the whole time? The more I thought, the more confused I got. Eventually, I just fell into a restless sleep. 4 days had passed since her father had been murdered. There had been no new developments in the case. All we learned was that he'd been killed somewhere else, and then his body had been dumped there. Shinjo wouldn't tell me any more than that, and neither would Kunosato. Arimura hadn't been back to school since then. I'd tried to contact her several times, but she never responded. Her father was dead. It was easy to assume that she must be depressed. But still, the words she'd said.
やったのはお兄ちゃんよ。
I couldn't get them out of my head. What did she mean? For the last 4 days, I'd been feeling kind of weird. Arimura had said she was attacked by someone at Scramble Crossing. And that was the same night I'd found her father's murdered body. Several other things had happened too. Arimura had almost been pushed down the stairs. And a second-year student at Hekiho had been killed. The student's name was Moe Ishida. Moe Ishida? She hadn't come to school often, and it was something of a problem child. From the photo I'd seen, she was a young girl with huge twin tails. Why had she been killed? And what did it have to do with the return of the New Generation Madness? There was also... Okay, wait. I need to look up Moe Ishida. Oh, well, she's a K-pop or J-pop idol. But the reason I made that sound though was because Ishida is the last name of, I think, Daru. Ishida Daru, I think. And you know, he likes Moe stuff, so I feel like that's just like a reference to him. They still didn't know who it belonged to. I didn't know if it had anything to do with the other murders, but it still felt like something awful was creeping up on us. I looked at my phone. Still no word from Arimura.
もう一度連絡してみるか。
Just as I started to pull her number out to call of my call history, there was a loud knock at the door.
なんだ
It was almost 11 at night. Who could be coming here at this hour? Was it my turn next?
嫌だ。来るな。来るな、来るな。来るなよ
There had to be some way. Was there some way to fight back?
そうだ。
My power. I had my power. It was no good. Damn it. She told me not to use it, and so I hadn't. But if I'd known this was going to happen, I would have practiced. The knocking at the door grew even louder. Now I heard a voice. Huh? That voice.
Arimura!
I quickly went to the door and looked outside. I saw Arimura frantically pounding on the door with tears in her eyes. I quickly opened it and let her in. Wow, she's not been sleeping. Something was wrong with her. She grabbed me, shaking.
どうした有村？
私追われてるんです。
追われてるって、まさかまた襲われたのか？
She nodded again and again.
でも追われてるって。
I went to lock the door.
兄です。
本当にそれはお兄さんだったのか？
確かに兄でした。間違いありません。
After I'd given her something to drink to calm her down and heard what she had to say, she told me that it was him for sure. Her family's condo had been destroyed in the Shibuya earthquake, so now they lived in Kanagawa. Her father's autopsy had only been completed yesterday, and then she'd gone back there. The funeral was today, and afterwards she'd come back to Shibuya with her aunt and uncle. The police had asked her to come back down to the station one more time, where they'd questioned her about her father's relationships. On the way back home, she'd felt someone watching her. And when she'd gotten near a construction site, some of the building materials had gotten loose and fallen down on top of her. She'd been watching her surroundings carefully after all that happened, and just barely saw them in time to duck out of the way. But when she looked up, she'd seen him. It was her brother, Shingo Arimura.
だから父を殺したのもきっと。
でもお兄さんは亡くなってるんじゃないのか、あの地震で。
That's what she'd said.
でも生きてたんです。生きて私に復讐しようとしてるんです。
復讐？どうしてお兄さんが有村に復讐するんだよ。
それは兄は私のせいで命を落としたから。
Hey? Arimura had been out during the earthquake, she said. Her brother hadn't realized that she was gone, and he'd entered the condo building to save her, only to die when it collapsed. Oh, I could tell Arimura blamed herself for that. Wait.
でもそれっておかしいだろ。
どうしてですか？
だってじゃあどうして有村の父さんは
それは父が家族を裏切っていたから。
Arimura didn't tell me how he'd betrayed his family, so I didn't know what had happened. But that didn't change the fact that what she was saying didn't make sense.
仮にお兄さんが生きていたとしてだ。そもそも生きてるなら復讐するっていうのは妙な話じゃないか。
And why wait till now?
それは。
だろ？助かってたなら復讐なんてすることはないはずだ。第一、お兄さんは有村のこと大事にしてたんだろう。だったら恨んだりってのは変じゃないか。
でも私は見たんです。あれは確かに兄でした。
Okay, but well, first of all, pushing you down the stairs and pushing you into traffic is really different from brutally stabbing a bunch of times.
お兄ちゃん、どうして？
No matter how much I tried to persuade her otherwise, Arimura kept insisting that what she'd seen was her brother. Was it really him that she saw? Even if it was someone who looked just like her brother, that didn't explain why they were attacking her. Let alone why they'd kill her father.
そうだ。有村、僕は君に謝らなきゃいけない。
謝る？何をですか？
知らなかったんだ。あれが君の父さんだったなんて。それなのに僕はあんな風に。
ああ。
だから悪かったって。
いいです。別に気にしてませんから。
It felt like she wasn't just trying to make me feel better. She really meant it.
それに私自身よく分かってないんです。父が死んで悲しいのかどうか。
有村。
不思議なくらいに分からないんですよ。自分で。父は私にずっと嘘をついていました。そんな父を私は多分ずっと許せないでいた。だから心のどこかで当然の報いだって思っている私がいるんです。もちろんだからってあんなむごい死に方をする必要はなかったって思いますけど。
Didn't tell me. I don't know what that means. Since she didn't tell me, I had no way of knowing what lie her dad had told. But I could imagine that whatever it was, it left a big impression on her. If nothing else, it was enough to affect her power as a gigalomaniac. I went outside and stretched, and I could feel all the bones in my body popping. It was still just past 8. Even at this hour, I could hear people playing basketball at the nearby court. Arimura had ended up sleeping in my bed. After all that had happened, she was mentally exhausted. Even for me, it didn't feel right to wake her up and send her home, and she'd just been through such a scare. I decided to let her sleep, and so I'd ended up trying to sleep on the tiny hard floor and mostly failing. I decided to go wash my face at the nearby fountain when the phone in my pocket began to vibrate.
電話？
It was from Kunosato.
どうしたんですかこんな時間に。もしかして何かあったんですか？
なんだ。朝から随分とご挨拶だな。
I would have reacted the same way to anybody else calling at this hour.
例の事件について新庄刑事から入ってきた警察の見解を教えておいてやろうと思ったんだが、必要ないならいい。
ちょっといいなんて言ってないじゃないですか。
I could tell that she wasn't joking. She was really about to hang up the phone. I quickly tried to stop her.
その情報とやら教えてください。ぜひ。
まあいいだろう。まずニュージェネ事件になぞらえた一連の事件についてだが。
Tobies. She meant the first 4 murders up until Watabe's death.
アイダリコと呼ばれる女による単独の犯行では説明がつかない部分が多々あると考えているようだ。
つまり他に誰か共犯がいるってことですか？
あるいはアイダリコ自身は放火事件だけで他に関しては一切関わっていないという可能性もある。
If that were true, it would mean that there were multiple people involved and the real killer hadn't been caught. Or maybe whatever organization had built that lab in the basement was responsible. Which meant that Arimura and I couldn't feel safe. No, Arimura had already said she'd been attacked, but...
それからお前たち二人も疑われているぞ。
え？まさか僕と有村がですか？
聞いていなかったのか？お前たちと言ったんだ。他に誰がいる？
どうして僕たちが疑われなきゃいけないんですか？
柿田の事件、渡部の事件に続き、これで3つ目だ。いくらなんでも偶然が続きすぎているというのが警察の考えらしい。
でもこれまでの件については僕たちは容疑から外れてるはずじゃないんですか？
これまでの事件はな。だがそれ以降の事件となると話はまた別だ。先日の被害者は知っているな。碧峰の2年の
石田萌ですか？あんまり学校にも来てない生徒だったってのは。
そうだ。どうもその娘は有村ひなえに憧れていたらしい。
有村に？
According to Kunosato, who was getting her information from Shinjo, of course, Moe Ishida had been a very quiet student in middle school who didn't really stand out. At school, she would mostly sit in the corner and read books. Arimura's name had shown up in her diary. Arimura was always cheerful and friends with everybody. Arimura had spoken to Moe too, and that had evidently made her very happy. After that, Moe had decided that she wanted to be like Arimura. She copied Arimura's hairstyle and started going downtown, where eventually she fell in with a bad crowd and stopped coming to school.
だからってそんなの有村には関係ないじゃないですか。
どんな些細なものでも関連がありそうとなると結びつけて考えるのが刑事という人種だ。それに原因は有村ひなえの言動にもある。
有村の？
先日の聴取で有村ひなえは言っていたらしい。
Yeah, that's a little.
それは僕にも言ってました。
そういうところが情緒不安定と考えられているらしい。それが事件に関与しているせいだとも。
そんなあんな事件に何度も出くわせば不安定にもなりますよ。
Several of the victims had already been related to her. Of course, the police had noticed that too.
それでお前の目から見てどうなんだ、有村ひなえは。
ちょっと参ってるみたいです。
そうか。まあ注意して見ておいてやれ。どうした？
あなた本当に久野里さんですか？
どういう意味だ？
だって久野里さんが僕たちの心配をしてくれるなんて。
お前命拾いをしたな。これが電話でなければ今すぐ叩きのめしているところだ。
It really was Kunosato.
とにかく有村ひなえの動向には注意していろ。パニックを起こした人間は何をやらかすかわからんからな。
That was all Kunosato said before she hung up. Hironori Kakita, Moe Ishida, and Arimura's dad. In the sense that she was the first to find the body, there was also Watabe. It was true that too many of the victims were related to Arimura. Maybe it was natural for the police to suspect her.
先輩。
あ、
Arimura smiled in relief and ran over to me.
起きたらいないからどこか行ったのかと思っちゃいました。
We've got a dependent girlfriend now. Arimura still didn't look great, but she seemed to have calmed down since yesterday.
ごめんなさい。私いつの間にか寝ちゃってて。
いや、それはいいよ。ただ、どうするこの後。
帰ります。おじさんやおばさんも心配してるだろうし。
そう。じゃあ途中まででよければ送ってくよ。
Even if she'd calmed down, I didn't feel safe sending her back alone. She must have felt the same way because she just nodded.
それにしても日曜は人が多くて嫌になるな。
ですよね。
あ、そういえば知ってるか、この前伊藤のやつが。
I tried to keep up as much meaningless small talk as I could while we headed toward Arimuna's home. Even with all the murders, it was still the weekend, and there was only a week to go until the festival. The whole town was in a state of excitement. It was a good thing for us. Arimuna was gradually starting to smile again, in fact. Oh no!
伊藤先輩、そんなことしたんですか？
If she's starting to smile, something bad's about to happen.
あいつにも困ったもんだよな。
あ、先輩、そろそろこの辺りで大丈夫。
Suddenly, Arimura froze.
お兄ちゃん。
I quickly spun around, but I didn't see anyone.
有村。
いや、お兄ちゃん。
落ち着け有村。お兄さんなんていない。
I grabbed her by the shoulders and I could feel that she was shaking.
でも今そこに。
She was pointing at a mannequin in a store window. There was nothing else there.
とにかく帰ろう。家まで送っていくよ。
November 2nd, 2015, Monday. Unfortunately, it's been about 3 hours and I'm gonna get going for the night. So thanks for watching. I don't know how long this route is, so I don't know if I'll finish it, but I'll start it again tomorrow. So, bye-bye.